everyone. Can you guys hear me all right? Hello, hello, hello. Beautiful. Yeah, hopefully the mic sounds a little better this time. The AC just turned off finally, so it should sound better than it did last time. How you guys doing? So, I don't want just streaming to be my thing, like I prefer making, videos, long form script type videos, but the current video I'm getting out is there's been some hiccups, so I haven't posted a video in longer than I like to. So I just thought I would stream again instead. In the meantime, the video should be out this weekend, but in the meantime, I thought I would react to another terrible video. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn on my light thing. I thought I would react to another terrible video in the meantime. This one from a YouTuber named Johnny Harris. Hassan already reacted to it, so it's Hassan did a pretty decent job reacting to it from what I saw, but he missed a lot of things that he didn't mention and point out. So I thought I would fill the gaps of a lot of the things that he missed in this video, because it's kind of bad to put it lightly. So yeah. Good, you? Yeah, I'm doing good. I just got back from playing basketball, so that was fun. I haven't played it in a while. Hey lol, you're using the phrase now? What phrase, horse? What do you mean? Hello, American comrades. Americans can't be comrades. I'm kidding. Sort of. Mostly. Hakeem has a great video where he parodies the style of a Johnny Harris video. Yeah, I've seen that. It's the one where it's like how America got so big or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, the only things I've seen from Johnny Harris are really bad. So, yeah, this video isn't much better, as we're about to find out. Okay, so let's see if this works. Beautiful. Every US-led coup mapped by Johnny Harris. Johnny Bear Harris is so bad that Mr. Beast had to debunk him, really? Holy shit, that's so funny. That is so fucking funny. Oh my god, that's amazing. Alright, let's watch the video.
There's a weapon that powerful countries use to get rid of leaders they don't like, leaders from other countries. It's called a coup. It's a French word that means a punch or a blow, because it kind of means coming in and forcibly punching out a government from power. No elections, no process, just power being seized. Just someone being pushed out and someone being put in. Coups happen in so many different ways, but I want to show you how the coup has been used by the United States of America as a tool to get what they want on the world stage. So let me walk you through some of the major US-led coups over the years to show you that while it sometimes seems like we live in a world full of order and rules, the reality is that the most powerful countries will often get their way by whatever means necessary. Okay, so here's how I'm defining the US-led coups that I'm going to put on our list here. Number one, they were successful. There's a lot of failed coup attempts. We're leaving those out. Number two, there must be at least one US government official involved in the coup. And number three, we need concrete evidence that the US was actually involved, not just speculation.
So I get that you don't want to have like a, you know, hour and a half long video or whatever when you have to talk about like every single coup attempt ever. But you could just maybe briefly mention numerous failed coups. And then United States government officials' direct involvement. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's okay. I guess these are all, you know, okay, you know, prerequisites. But the problem, of course, is like, okay, is he going to, you know, be honest about using these prerequisites, or is he going to use it to, like, you know, cover up certain interventions if they don't fit his specific definition laid out in his rules?
While the US has been involved in tons of regime change efforts around the world, we landed on a much shorter list. These are the coups that I think best exemplify how this tool has been used for international power over the years.
So that's weird. So he says they've been involved in a bunch of regime change efforts, and then he's like, but I'm actually going to do a much shorter list. Okay.
Let's start here.
Okay, so now we're going to skip because, like, the first, like, 5 minutes are okay. But then things start to go off the rails.
Because Nicaragua is taking loan. Assemble a bunch of Marines in Panama. He's president, and he wants to take back control of the country from American businesses. In this case, we're talking about bananas. The banana companies were not going to let this happen. And it was mostly this guy, a banana businessman named Sam the Banana Man. He's not going to let this pesky president run his country. No. So he assembles his own militia. He literally buys a surplus Navy ship, loads it up with weapons, and starts his campaign to get this president out. He sails from New Orleans to the coast of Honduras, and he literally invades the country with, like, a private army. Wait, where's the US government in all this? They also didn't like the political direction of Honduras either, so they just sort of stood back. Let this private invasion happen, and then at the critical moment, the US steps in to order a ceasefire, basically bullying the president to step down. He had no way forward, no defense, so he resigns. And
so, how many years do you think he's gonna skip from this coup to the next? How many years? You'll see.
Banana Man's leader of choice takes the presidency, giving the banana businessman land and a unique status to import anything he needs tax-free. And, wait for it, he refunds him for all of the coup expenses using public Honduran money. This banana man literally overthrew the government and made Honduras pay for it. Wow. Okay, so let's move forward to the 50s, where the coup becomes a more useful tool in the American toolkit.
He skips 50 years! Or no, he skips 40 years! He skips 40 years of history! He skips so many things. Like, if you're gonna make a video like this and you're gonna set out your rules where you're like, okay, these are the rules I'm gonna follow, like, you have to follow those rules. Like, I 100% respect the attempt of making a video like this, because this is like the gateway to becoming a leftist. Like, for me, this was like how I became a leftist, was learning about how the US did coups, because I used to think, oh, the US is a force for freedom and democracy and all that shit. Like, I fell for that. I was like, yeah, we are a thing for good. And then it was like, and then I read about all these things. I was like, oh my God. And then you start to connect the whole idea of imperialism and you know, the way the U.S. keeps these countries under control. And so that's where it's like this gateway. So these videos are important, but it's like, you're not telling the full story. Like, I'm not saying this video has no worth, but if you're going to do a video like this, you have to fucking tell the full fucking story. So, like, so this is the document I used for my Casual Scholar video. So, he mentions Honduras. What he doesn't mention since then is in Nicaragua, multiple military, or there was like a consistent military occupation for like over 20 years. In Mexico, they did regime change against Francisco Madero in 1913, and then they put this psychopath called Victoriano Huerta in 1914 and then they couped him out of power. So they did Mexico twice. They also military occupied Haiti for almost 20 years. This is all in the time period that he skipped. So he skipped all of this. They intervened in the Dominican Republic in 1903, 1904, 1914, and occupied the country from 1916 to 1924. So yeah, he's missing, like, just in Latin America. I don't know elsewhere in the world if they also did this. And then there was less regime change post World War One until World War Two, until after World War Two. But there were still plenty of things that happened that he's just leaving out pre World War One. So yeah, and this is just in Latin America. So in Mexico, Nicaragua, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. At least 4 major examples of numerous interventions that he did not mention in this video that has, like, you know, many millions of, like, this channel has millions of subscribers and gets millions of views, and it's like, oh my god, dude, you could be accurate about this, but you weren't. You missed it. Oh.
There's this new US agency dedicated to collecting and analyzing information from all over the world, meaning for spying. They call it the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and it completely revolutionizes the art of the coup. Oh, and at this point, the US is now a full-blown global superpower, no longer just looking in their own neighborhood, but rather at the whole world map, investing huge resources into fighting their global rival and its communist ideology. So this gets us to Iran, 1953. Where Iran had just elected a new star politician, Mohammad Mossadegh. He rises to power believing that Iran must take...
Another huge aspect that's just totally missing about this video is the US doesn't always have to coup the country, because they can keep it under control through the IMF and the World Bank, or it can rig elections like it did in Italy. That's a notable example, and in other places. So, like, he's making it, maybe he's not purposely doing this, but he's making it, at least accidentally, seem like this is, like, the only way that the US subjugates countries. This is the only way that the US keeps countries under its control. So, which is just not true. So, like, I wish he would at least have said something like, this is not, by the way, to include electoral interventions or... So, yeah, I mean, it's just... Yeah, I mean, for a channel with, like, 3 million subs, it's, like... It's actually exactly what I would expect. I don't know why I would expect him to, like, you know, actually do a good job, honestly.
back control of its most valuable natural resource, oil, which at the time was completely controlled by a British company called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. We know it today as BP. Mossadegh is done with this. Let's kick the British out and take back our oil. But like the US, Britain is not happy with Iranians trying to take back their resources. So they warn that if they do this, there will be consequences. So the British catch a quick meeting with the CIA's Middle East guy who was passing through London, and they pitch him on this idea. Let's throw out Mossadegh. The CIA's like, okay, and they kind of sniff communist vibes on Mossadegh with this big desire to nationalize Iran's oil, or at least they tell themselves they do. So the CIA agrees, and they secretly send this guy to Iran. He's the Middle East bureau chief, Kermit Roosevelt. He's like in his 30s. Oh, and yes, he is the grandson of another big coup guy, Teddy Roosevelt, who I have gone into in other videos. Roosevelt sneaks into Iran and is given $1 million taxpayer dollars to use, quote, in any way that would bring about the fall of Mossadegh. So now there's American CIA agents in Iran secretly trying to overthrow the government. And it's a rocky start at first with a bunch of failures, but they start using their money to get traction, bribing politicians, religious clerics, and other leaders to say divisive and controversial things about Mossadegh. They hired locals to stage attacks against religious leaders, making it look like they had been ordered to do so by Mossadegh, but really they were just getting paid by the CIA to do this. And with enough time and money, they create an atmosphere of chaos and hostility and distrust among the public. Oh, and there's weapons. The CIA stashes enough weapons and explosives to support a, quote, 10,000-man guerrilla organization for 6 months, like just in case they need to, like, start a full-on conflict. The result of all of this is more violence and chaos that engulfs the capital. Shops are being destroyed, bullets are flying into mosques, people are beaten, and thousands of paid demonstrators flood the street. The city falls into anarchy, all of it orchestrated by CIA money. And in the end...
Another thing I don't like about the framing of, like, US-led coups is that I think a way better word is regime change. Instead of saying coups, the more inclusive phrase is regime change, which means not just, you know, like the CIA, like, assassinating the leader or whatever. It means invading a country to replace the leader, because like the way he's framing it, it's like if a military invasion happens, that's like not a coup, because it's, by his framing of it, that isn't like a coup, and that's why I like the phrase regime change a lot more than the word coup, because it's a more inclusive definition. When you use the word coup, it can get kind of like ambiguous what that means.
This all results in a bloody shootout at Mossadegh's house. He eventually gives up and turns himself in. He's put through a sham trial and found guilty of treason, and sentenced to 3 years in solitary confinement and then house arrest, where he stayed until his death. The previous ruler of Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah, which just means king, had fled the country. But now, with the democratically elected Mossadegh gone, and with the backing of the US and UK, he could charter a flight back into Iran and take control.
The Shah crowns himself in a tradition which goes back 25 centuries. His title is King of Kings, and he becomes Emperor of his nation.
The US really came out on top here. They got what they wanted. They now have an American-friendly dictator in a powerful country in the Middle East, who is now welcoming American oil companies to get in on one of the largest oil reserves on Earth. Under the Shah, Iran becomes a brutal police state. He executed military officers, student leaders, anyone associated with Mossadegh. He set up a secret police force, and life was brutal. So brutal that in 1979, the frustration of Iranians burst forth in mass protests that ran the Shah out of office and replaced him with an inspiring new leader who would turn Iran into an Islamic republic, built in part off a foundation of resentment for the US having meddled in their country. The Islamic Republic has held power ever since, and has morphed into the oppressive theocracy we know today, though maybe not for long. Before we go on, a quick reminder that all of these coups, these plans to overthrow leaders in other countries, did not require American votes or consensus or approval of Congress. It was usually just a few key men in government buildings in Washington, D.C. making this happen.
That's such a bizarre thing to say. That is like the perfect liberal thing to say. Like, the people didn't vote to invade this other country and brutally overthrow its socialist or left-wing leader. It's like they have to vote for that. And also, it wasn't just like a few men. It was like many, many rich, wealthy men, coordinating with each other. Like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Yeah, he's framing it as like a few bad men in a room, as if it was like if there was the right guy in the right time, these things wouldn't have happened. Regime change like this has happened under every president, like this kind of thing, like even maybe like the least bad president, Jimmy Carter of the modern era, shit happened under him, plenty of shit happened under him. It happened under every single president. So it's not like, if the right guy is there, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen no matter what. Maybe certain people will do it worse, but it's going to happen with everyone, because that's how the system works. Exactly.
These people would go on to define the Cold War and shape so many covert operations around the world that many of which we'll never know about. Okay, let's keep going. The next year, in Guatemala, the CIA tried to pull the same playbook that they used in Iran, once again targeting a leader that the people had elected, but who wanted to take back the country's resources for the people, to break up these American monopolies that controlled the country's electricity and railroad. The president even starts to seize land from one massive banana company. It was often unused land that he wanted to redistribute to the locals who could farm it and feed their families, and hopefully climb out of the system of endemic poverty in the country. Once again, I made a whole video on this, the geopolitics of bananas in Central America. But the fact is that the US decided that they had to defend the banana companies, or else more communist reforms would spread. So the US President and Secretary of State ordered an overthrow, and the CIA got right to work. The CIA hand selects a leader that they want to be in power, and then they start giving equipment and training to a bunch of Guatemalan exiles and private soldiers. They set up a secret operation base on the outskirts of Miami. They start delivering weapons to the Panama Canal. But like the other coups, it can't just all be about weapons. They gotta own the information space. So they create a radio station that sounds like it's a local Guatemalan radio station, but really it's being operated out of a small town in Florida. And they start publishing fake news about an uprising, unrest, a rebellion. And then at the same time, the fighters that the CIA had trained and armed invades Guatemala. Pilots start dropping bombs on fuel tanks and military posts and airports. But they weren't starting a full-on war. They weren't trying to cause real damage. They wanted it to feel like a domestic uprising, like a war was on the horizon, to freak people out. And for many, it totally worked. They thought that this was a real uprising and had no idea that the CIA was behind it all. But the president knew what was up. He had...
Remember how just earlier he talked about how the evil of, Iran's regime and the uprisings. And I don't know much about Iran either way. Oh, thank you, Dalim. Thanks for debunking the pro-Trotsky Lenin letter. You're no problem. That's actually one of my favorite videos that I didn't get many views on, but in terms of like providing evidence like on the screen, like for my claim, that's definitely one of my favorite videos. So, thank you. And yeah, if anyone wants to financially support me, you can do the super thanks or super chat, whatever it's called, or you can also subscribe to me on Patreon, where you'll get early access to my videos and other perks. You get a unique role in the Discord, cool stuff like that. It's a great video. Thank you. But yeah, he's laying out right now how the CIA very clearly made up an uprising in against Arbenz's government. He's literally saying it openly, that it was like a color revolution or whatever that was made up. But like he's like completely like with Iran, he's like the evil, and I'm not saying it's not an evil dictatorship. I'm just saying like this is why I'm skeptical of every single thing the US government says. It doesn't mean they're always wrong, but you should always be skeptical of every single thing they say, because like they make shit up like this all the time. This is how you foster regime change. This is how you destroy countries, is by winning the information war.
Mess with the USA, and now he's hearing about it. Military leaders in his circle are feeling the pressure from the big bully from the north, and they turn on him, and he eventually surrenders. On his way out, the president addresses his people, makes it very clear that, quote, the United Fruit Company, in collaboration with the United States, is responsible for what is happening to us. And just like that, one president is out, and the hand-picked CIA option is in. This new regime is brutal, and goes on to do horrible things. Detaining people they thought were communists, killing prisoners, breaking up labor unions, and in the process, restoring the banana company's land, and ensuring that they maintained their hold on this economy. This kicks off an era in Guatemala of more political assassinations and instability, something that still plagues the country today. And yet to this day, there is no evidence that the Soviets were ever slightly interested in Guatemala. Communism was once again the excuse, but really this was about securing American business interests, tearing a country apart for bananas.
Bananas taste the best in other. That's for you.
All right, let's go to Africa. So it's 1960 here in the center of Africa, a country called Congo. They just gained independence from Belgium, and they have an election. And this guy, Patrice Lumumba, wins, becomes the prime minister. But immediately, over in Washington, the communist alarm bells instantly start sounding off. Because we're in the middle of the Cold War, and Congo is a place full of tons of natural resources, including loads of uranium, the main ingredient for nuclear bombs. This is at a time when Americans are keeping gas masks next to their bed and have hordes of canned goods in their basements. And officials in Washington can't risk Congo falling into the influence of the Soviet Union. So they start focusing on this prime minister. The CIA director called him, quote, an urgent and prime objective that should, quote, be a high priority of our covert action. So they pull a more political coup than the ones before. They start allying with Lumumba's political enemies and Congo's former colonizer Belgium. They bribe politicians, they fund protests and labor movements, and they circulate propaganda, similar ingredients to the previous coups. And when the moment is right, all these bribed politicians do what the CIA asked them to. They remove Lumumba from power. And the CIA is right there giving money and intelligence and advice to the new government. This political solution was actually not the first try. The CIA had tried to assassinate Lumumba in the past, but all of those attempts failed, which is why they turned to hijacking and manipulating Congolese politics, a brand new democracy, supporting the people who would eventually go on to put Lumumba in front of a Congolese and Belgian firing squad, making this effectively a political assassination, supported from an ocean away. And yet there's so much gray area in these coups. In this case, it's really tough to prove that the CIA's support was the key factor in Lumumba's assassination. It's debated to this day. An effective foreign-sponsored coup works like this, operating in the shadows, fueling divisions, appealing to the worst demons of the people on the ground, through money, through influence.
I highly recommend, by the way, Barbara Kingsolver's book, Poisonwood Bible, which it's a fiction book talking about a family, but part of it is about the coup in Belgium, and it's a very, very good book. Didn't Che fight in Congo, or am I wrong? Oh, was it? I'm pretty sure it was the Congo, and then he went to Bolivia after the Congo. I think it was the Congo. Yes.
All right, let's move on to the Caribbean in the 1960s. There's a brutal dictator here in the Dominican Republic. I mean, this guy's really bad. He's rumored to feed his opponents to sharks. But anyway, what the US cares about is that there's fear that the communist revolution could happen at any moment. So the CIA sends weapons to a group of hitmen who go assassinate this guy. It ends up being an ambush and a car chase. They're successful in taking him out, ending his 31-year rule. And eventually the US sends in forces to occupy the DR to make sure that a leftist candidate doesn't come to power. They restore order, and eventually a US-friendly candidate is elected. Okay, so now we have to head over to Vietnam in 1963. Boy, this is a way bigger one than we have time for, but we're trying to focus on the coup element of this. Vietnam was divided in two, between communist and pro-Western governments. The US needs the South to stay up, his military to... saying, quote, the first America ballooned into a long war, and... Okay, Okay, let's blast through a few of these really quickly. I'm gonna skirt over some details here. It's 1964 and Brazil is potentially veering off into communism with the rise of a new leftist leader. Lucky for the CIA, there's already a coup being plotted against him, so the US military just shows up with ships off the coast of Brazil. They airlift in a bunch of ammunition and supplies. They didn't end up having to do much, actually. Instead, they just stood by with reinforcements and watched the Brazilian coup go down. The leftist leader goes down and a new leader comes in. In 1973, there's a coup in Chile that is a very...
So there's one big coup, very big coup that he's missing, that the U.S. and the CIA helped participate in, which was Indonesia in 1967. Also, Laos in 1960 is another one he's missing. Cambodia in 1970 is another one he's missing. So maybe by his rules, they do not exactly follow what he lays out as like the specific rules, but the US and the CIA were involved in these coups, and now he gets to Chile, which you'll see.
Very complicated story with conflicting accounts, and we went down a super deep rabbit hole, and we've decided that because the evidence is not rock solid, we're going to cut it for time, but definitely some crazy shit went down. I'm not saying it didn't.
So that is just really dumb. The CIA was involved, specifically in that they assassinated the general who was in charge before Pinochet. I forget his name, Rene something. They assassinated the general who did not want to coup Allende out of power. He was like a apolitical general who did not want to, take him out. So, the CIA literally assassinated this guy. They tried to kidnap him, and they ended up killing him because the kidnapping became botched. The general that came to power after him was Pinochet, and the CIA did not, from what I know, the CIA did not like directly like say like, all right, launch this coup now, but they killed the general that led to Pinochet on purpose in the hope that there would be a coup against Allende. So it pretty much is completely caused by the CIA in the US. So for him to just skip past that as like not fitting his rules for what regime change by the US is really silly. I heard the one in Indonesia was absolutely brutal. The fact that he did not even mention Indonesia is fucking insane, because that was arguably the worst case of regime change in American history. A million people died. A million people died as a result of Sukarno and Sukarno. I always mix up the two. I don't know which one was in power before. Yeah, Sukarno was the good one. He was the leftist one. But yeah, and then he was replaced. With Sukarno, who brutally fucking massacred the communists in Indonesia. Brutally.
Okay, we're back in Africa, and it's the 80s, and over here in Libya, the dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, was making lots of trouble in the region, funding terrorist groups and working to expand his influence all over the region. Then he gets a call from his neighbor Chad asking for help against a rebellion. Gaddafi eagerly sends 4,000 troops to occupy a huge part of the country and makes friends with the new president by helping him exile his rival. And soon Gaddafi's getting greedy and threatening to merge Chad into Libya. The US is not into this. So Ronald Reagan fires up the well-oiled coup machine, launching a covert war, sending weapons and cash to rebels in Chad, and supporting that political opponent who was ousted, helping him fight back. And it works. The president of Chad has to flee, and the US-backed and supported leader comes to power. And now there's a conflict, and the CIA continues arming the war even after this guy is in office. The new US-backed leader rules brutally for 8 years, until he's eventually overthrown by a military officer, and in 2013 he was charged with crimes against humanity, torture, and war crimes. Okay, now let's go to this little island in 1983. It's communism again, and the US sends 2,000 troops to invade this small remote island and remove their communist leader. They didn't really know much about this small island, and they literally had to use tourism maps to plan their invasion. Anyway, American forces move in, overwhelm the Grenadian fighters who happen to be joined by their Cuban allies, the government collapses, and the US-friendly leader comes to power. Okay, back down to Central America. It's 1989.
Yeah, everything I've seen of Maurice Bishop, who was the communist leader of Grenada, was super cool. He seemed like a super awesome dude. And I'm also making a video of like the best socialist state songs, and two of the songs on that list are Grenadian communist songs. Their music is fucking amazing. Mwah! I love it so much. It's so different from all the other socialist state music I've heard. So yeah.
And we're here in Panama, where the U.S. has control of a very important canal. And luckily, the Panamanian dictator has been very friendly to American interests. But the U.S. starts losing confidence in this guy, wondering if he's really the best choice, ensuring the U.S. maintain easy access to their vital canal. Oh, and it didn't help that this guy was indicted in Florida on drug trafficking and money laundering charges. We gotta get him out. But the straw that broke the camel's back for this guy was when Panamanian troops killed an unarmed American soldier in Panama City. The U.S. is done with this guy, so they invade Panama with 27,000 troops. Panama's military is crushed, and the dictator is eventually arrested and sentenced to 40 years in prison. And the U.S. ensures access to its canal after all. Okay, so now it's the end of the 1980s, and the Soviets are invading Afghanistan. And are meeting resistance from a bunch of fighters from all over the world who have come to Afghanistan to fight back against the Soviet occupation, many of them with fundamentalist religious motivations. But the US doesn't care about their motivation. They just care that they're willing to fight against the Soviets and the Soviets' puppet, the Afghan president. And it totally works. With the help of the US, these fighters push the Soviets back and successfully run the Afghan president out of office. And as he's being run out of office, he forebodingly warns the Americans that if they leave Afghanistan in the hands of these fighters, that it would, quote, be turned into a center for terrorism. And his prophecy was completely fulfilled. Those US-funded fighters were people whose names we know today. Osama bin Laden, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the guy who started the group that would eventually become ISIS. Those same weapons that the US sent to counter the Soviets and to effect regime change in Afghanistan would go on to be used against American soldiers years later, when the US was back, orchestrating yet another regime change after 9/11, against the very groups they once enabled. The US would eventually leave Afghanistan, only to find the country immediately falling back into Taliban rule. We're almost to the end of our list, and we're now in modern day. It's 2003, and 150,000 American troops invade Iraq. They say that they are there to find and destroy weapons of mass destruction, but their main focus is taking out this guy, Saddam Hussein, which they do in a matter of weeks. Saddam fleeing into hiding and...
Yeah, one of the Grenadan songs is called Human Rights, and I forget what the other one is called. My laptop's freezing, so never mind.
And President Bush declaring mission accomplished, establishing an American-friendly government in Iraq, creating once again a negative byproduct by alienating huge swaths of the Iraqi people and army who form a bunch of anti-American rebel groups that go on to fight against the American occupation, some morphing into groups like ISIS who wreak all kinds of havoc on the region to this day. Once again, I made a whole video about this topic, go check it out. Iraq remains a place of deep political instability. Trust in government is extremely low. And the question of how and why we did this expensive, horrific, destructive coup is still something that there aren't really good answers to.
There aren't really good answers to? Oh my god. There aren't any good answers. Who knows? We're all trying to figure out why we did this. Could it be the same reason? It's the same reason they do it to every country. It's not complicated, but I guess if you are a liberal, it's more difficult to look at things systemically, because if you look at things systemically, it's more inconvenient to your worldview, which is that these countries are destroyed because the U.S. wants their resources, and they want their oil, they want, lithium, they want whatever it is, and they will destroy your country to get that. It's not complicated. Like, what the fuck are you saying, dude? What are you saying?
Again, you can go watch my video for more on that. And this gets us to the final coup on our list. It's 2011 during a wave of protests spreading throughout this region.
So he's skipped a bunch more. Let's see. Okay, so they missed a coup in Bolivia in 1971. He missed 2 coups in Haiti against Jean Bertrand in 1991, and then in 2004. I'm just going by his definition, which is successful interventions. So Yeah, he's missed at least, and this is just in Latin America, so I don't even know about the rest of the world in terms of interventions. He's missed at least 2 in Haiti and 1 in Bolivia, more. In top of the other ones he missed, like in Indonesia, which is a huge one, in Cambodia, and in Laos. Can you share this list of CIA coups? If you go to my my most recent video, in the description of the video, the list is linked. And my list is just about Latin America, though, for the most part.
Trying to take down all these strongman dictators, one of which was this guy, Muammar Gaddafi, the same Gaddafi we were talking about earlier who was like taking over Chad. He's still here, and he's still a very horrible dude. And there's worry that he's going to potentially massacre all of these pro-democracy protesters. So the US feels like it must get involved to save these protesters. They rally their NATO allies.
So yeah, this is like the worst part of the video. The US feels that it must get involved to save these protesters. Holy fuck, dude. Oh. I don't know why he's suddenly become such a fascist piece of shit now, specifically with this one. I think maybe it's because it's more recent in time. So it's like he's like, it's, or maybe because it was NATO that did it, that he's embarrassed to really talk about what actually happened. So, oh my god. The US wanted to save the protesters. First of all, the protesters, the vast majority of the protesters were far right. They were Islamic, fundamentalist, far right, fascist pieces of shit. Far right. Far right. And all these things were made up about how Gaddafi was firing on crowds of people with helicopters. About how Gaddafi was giving soldiers Viagra to mass rape women. I talk about this in my Libya video. It is completely made up. It is there is no evidence that Gaddafi ever gave Viagra to his soldiers to mass rape. There's no evidence. The UN, Amnesty International, Doctors Without Borders all investigated this and found there was no evidence for this. There was no evidence that crowds of protesters were being fired on either. And even if they were, that was not why the US invaded. The US invaded because they wanted Libya's oil, they wanted Libya's gold, and Gaddafi they were scared of Gaddafi because Gaddafi was like, he was bizarre in that he was like literally willing to go up against the whole fucking West in terms of wanting to establish like this Pan-African state. Ban Chemical Mind. No, please don't do that. But where was I? Now you interrupted my train of thought. I was on a good fucking streak, and then I lost my train of thought. Damn it. But yeah, so Gaddafi was like a threat to the West. He was almost unique in that, you know, he was just like, he just didn't give a shit in a lot of ways, in terms of like I'm just gonna form a Pan-African state and all this shit. And he pissed people off, and they wanted his oil, and they wanted his gold. There's literally an email with the subject title Gaddafi's gold in it, but to from I think from one of Hillary Clinton, or from one of Hillary Clinton's advisors. So yeah, it's like, man, dude, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? You have just completely lost the plot. Like, at least I think at least with a lot of the things he said, they were educational, but now he's getting into the more modern day, and he's getting fucking weird. He's like, we don't know why they invaded Iraq and took over Iraq. We don't know why Libya, we invaded Libya because Gaddafi was gonna murder protesters. No, he wasn't. There's no proof of that. That was made up by the press, by the newspapers, by fucking pieces of shit like Anderson Cooper, who go on and are like, who are you gonna trust, the people or Gaddafi? And it's just like, they all have blood on their hands. Yeah, it's just ridiculous that he would say that. And I think the reason he's saying that is because NATO was involved in Iraq. NATO was involved in Libya. So I think he's suddenly become a fucking pathetic coward because it's in the modern day. So he can't say about these more modern institutions that that NATO, because NATO's the good guy now or whatever because of Ukraine. So he has to like whitewash the reality of these things.
To help them. But at some point, the mission switches to total regime change. We don't know exactly how this happened. Only the people in the room do. But is it surprising?
We don't know exactly how this happened. Only the people in the room do. Oh my god, dude. Oh my god, dude. We don't know how this happened. Only the people in the room do. Okay.
We've seen this long arc of the US using the coup as a force for getting their way in an international conflict. It's a tried and true tool in the American foreign policy toolkit. So it's not surprising that a coup becomes a solution during these difficult decision-making processes. So anyway, the target becomes Gaddafi, and now NATO drones are firing missiles at his convoy, and he eventually...
Difficult decision-making processes. He frames it as if it's like it's like a hard decision to make, as if it's like a moral, you know, it's like, oh man, should I do this or should I not? They wanted to do this. They were excited to do this because after the Arab Spring, there were protests in Libya, and they knew that this was their best chance to get Gaddafi out. This was their best chance to replace him with someone loyal to them. So of course they went for regime change. What the fuck? He's literally saying that NATO only intervened to protect protesters from being massacred. And then just somewhere along the way, it developed. Dude, oh my god. Holy shit. So dishonest. If this video had ended before this and not done Libya, it would have been like okay, but with the Libya thing at the end, it's really fucking bad. Yeah, Hillary Clinton, we came, we saw, he died. Like, he boasted. She boasted about this. Like,
gets captured and gets killed on the spot. Libya has been in chaos ever since, but it's not like it was a great place under Gaddafi. And once again, we're in a gray area where we don't know the history that didn't happen, or how things could have...
It's not like it was a great place under Gaddafi. It had the highest human development index of any major country in Africa, I believe. I may be wrong on that, but I know it had close to the top or the highest HDI of any country in Africa. Terrible video, man. 1.5 million views.
Would have turned out different if the US didn't get involved. That debate lives on. Okay, so that's our list. These are our coups that we decided to go over in this video. And there are so many more that we could have mentioned. My purpose in doing this broad back-to-back history of American-led coups was so that we can see patterns that emerge. How a rising superpower became really good at removing leaders that...
There's so many more that we could have mentioned. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? What is the title of your video? Every US-led coup mapped. That's the title of your video. And then you don't... And then you say, oh yeah, you know, we could have done more coups. What the fuck?
that didn't align with their way of seeing the world, or in a lot of cases who were not friendly to American business interests. But let's be clear, the US didn't invent this. This is something that powerful countries and empires have always done. What characterizes US-led coups, especially during the Cold War, was how the overthrow of these governments often stamped out new democracies, budding democratic movements, replacing them with authoritarian leaders who would go on to oppress the people, with the support and backing of the United States, and in the process, redirecting the country's history. Lately, Russia has been meddling in the election process of the United States, and I've been reflecting on my feelings towards that, the violation of having an external power, sowing doubt and polarization and fear in my own democracy, in my own society. It feels like such a violation, and it is. This is giving me just a tiny taste of what it feels like to have an outside power pulling the strings in your country, tearing it apart for their own purposes, and in the process creating more problems for the people and for the United States itself, undermining any semblance of democracy or development, all in the name of keeping the US on top and dominant over the globe.
Yeah, man, that Russia government tearing our country apart, as if it's like as if you can even begin to compare the horror and the destruction that America has caused to other countries, to Russia sending maybe like a few hundred bot accounts or whatever, or a few thousand bot accounts. I don't really know the details, to like make people angry at each other online. Like, holy shit, dude. It's an incredible take. That's it. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about that? Is that a good video? My mouse is fucking invisible all of a sudden. I can't believe bombs a village, that the Russian government bombs a wedding, would meddle in drone strikes children, US elections. Yeah, wasn't there like a fucking review or something, or study that showed like that it had like no real impact on America, like the Russian bots? I feel like there was something like that. Since the NATO intervention in Libya, the country is impoverished, destabilized, in the midst of a brutal civil war, and has an open-air slave market. Yeah, I think there might still be a ceasefire on the civil war in Libya, but I'm not sure. And it probably won't be permanent. Things are still not stable there from what I know. Yeah, and it's insane what he said, like, Libya was torn apart, but it's not like it was great before. Compared to like the entirety of the rest of Africa, it's actually pretty advanced. It was pretty advanced. It was actually fairly well off. Like, it's just like, yeah, he has so many people working on this video too. That's what's wild. Like, no one at any point raises any objections to anything. Patreon newsroom producers. So, okay, story producer. Is that who does his research? Rafaela Sewert? Video by Johnny Harris. I don't know. I'm trying to find out who does his research. I guess the CIA just sends him what to say. I don't know. No, I don't think he's like a literal CIA agent or federal agent or whatever. He's just a fucking liberal, you know? All right, well, I have another video I wanted to watch, which is, what if Altists video on who will win America's next civil war. I don't know if I want to watch all of this. If it starts to just get boring, but I am curious to see what he actually says.
I was back in high school back then. I had no idea how bad things would get over the next couple years. Since then, we've seen both political parties in America claim the election results are faulty. The Capitol was stormed by rebels, and major cities of the Pacific Northwest literally had rebellions, with violent riots spreading across the country. And the nation is more polarized than ever. This is a video to make an honest and brutal look at how another American civil war would break out, who would win, what factors would set it up, and the like. We're here to tackle the $10 trillion question of if the world's hegemon will be consumed by the fires of its own division.
Can you believe he has 500,000 subscribers with that fucking intro? It's like the intro for like a fucking 200 subscriber channel. What the fuck?
The last time the U.S. broke into civil war, the Union was led by one of the greatest commanders in American history, Ulysses Grant, who managed to finally pin down the elusive Robert E. Lee. Grant had a crazy career and an even crazier presidency. On Magellan TV, they have an excellent series on him, and many more great generals in their series, The Great Commanders. This series covers everyone from Julius Caesar and Horatio Nelson to Zhukov and Grant. This awesome docuseries is available on Magellan TV, a documentary streaming service made by filmmakers with the best history. I was back in the suburb of Philadelphia I lived in as a teenager, which is one of the most important swing areas in all of America, and it often determines who wins the whole presidential election. I went to two different grocery stores, a Whole Foods and a Wegmans. The horrible thing is that I can immediately tell the politics of the grocery store within 20 seconds. Whole Foods put a massive emphasis on organic, free trade, or vegetarian foods. The people dress differently in both places, and I actually got weird looks for dressing as I normally do. I could go on like 15 other things, where we're at the point where conservatives and progressives talk, dress, worship.
The right and left ways of life. You can be left wing and be heteronormative. Like it's weird how he seems to be framing these as like absolutes. Follows traditional male female gender roles. That's what conservatives say instead of that's what they say instead of just I want women to be enslaved to me. They always just say traditional gender roles. Oh my god. Teachers exist to empower them. It's so funny because this guy's like a right-winger, but like, if you read like the teach thing, he makes the leftists sound so good. Teachers exist to empower their students. They will teach them how to change the world in a positive way and engineer them to be better people. Okay? That sounds pretty great. Like,
teach, eat, love, and literally about everything else differently. It's so strange to go from Kansas City to Boston and see that people's politics are everywhere. And literally
there's also
about
plenty
everything
of
else.
There's also plenty of right-wing weirdos. This is like maybe like this is a generally accurate, but there's plenty of right-wing weirdos who are vegetarian. There's plenty of left-wingers who eat traditional food. There's plenty of right-wingers that wear like casual, weird streetwear type things. So yeah, it's weird.
Differently. It's so strange to go from Kansas City to Boston and see that people's politics are everywhere to see. I was driving across Pennsylvania to Ohio a couple weeks ago, and I saw about 5 different Trump signs along the highway, with even one burnt into the grass, alongside countless signs telling you'll define God that abortion is wrong. Likewise, I'm in Los Angeles right now, and I briefly lived in New York, and in both places, you will see overtly left-wing signs and billboards in the street. When people tell me social justice isn't a real movement, I just point to how Times Square had a giant billboard about encouraging Latinx stories from Disney. The craziest place I've ever been to in America was Portland, Maine, where it seems like a majority of shops had some kind of social justice virtue signaling messages. All of this is so shocking when you put it into perspective that in living memory, or back in the 40s and 50s, political polarization was basically absent from America. California at the time was known for being an anti-partisan state in which there was so little interest in political parties that candidates would often run on both Democrat and Republican platforms at the same time.
Political polarization wasn't absent. It was just that like if you were a left winger in the 50s, like, you got your shit fucked up. Like, you just weren't allowed to have left wing beliefs. So everyone who had like any fucking influence in any way was just a right wing, racist, crazy person. It wasn't that like there wasn't polarization. It was that there was a hegemonic right wing mindset, especially in the 50s. And you could not really stray from that. Yeah, Hitler was vegetarian, yeah.
Or just not declare what party they were running for. A government report in 1949 said Americans actually needed more political polarization since the Republicans and Democrats didn't give the voters any real choices, really standing for the same things. If anything, the political parties at the time stood for ethnic and religious things rather than actual policies. However, we all know that America is a divided country now, but can things really get as bad as a civil war? We're in a modern civilized country. Will we really degrade towards killing our own people with guns, missiles, and axes? And has anything like this happened before? There are a couple different models or theories that people use to predict history. I think a lot of them have validity, but really shouldn't be treated as religious truths and should be taken with a tremendous amount of common sense. For my years of studying on this topic, it seems possible history has cycles, but none of them are clean repeats.
Why would you present a picture like this with no commentary? Like,
Since history has hundreds of cycles operating at the same time, smashing together, resulting in mass chaos and the adventure that we will have to live through in the future. However, there are a couple different ways that you could predict the US having another civil war over the next few decades. The first is a generational perspective. The short explanation is that for reasons that are not entirely clear, the English-speaking world has some kind of massive external conflict or civil war every 80 years that spurs it. For short order, the last one
was World War II was World War II an American Civil War?
was World War II. Before that, the U.S. Civil War, then the American Revolution. Before that, the English Civil War. Before that, the Spanish Armada. Then the Wars of the Roses, Hotspurs Rebellion, and you could go back onward to the Anglo-Saxons.
Dude, these people just have to find these fucking patterns that don't exist. It's like the whole thesis that empires fall every 500 years or whatever. It doesn't exist, bro. How is World War II an American Civil War?
William Strauss and Neil Howe wrote a book about this in 1991 called Generations that posited a theory of generations that says that certain kinds of generational archetypes play out over time. It goes something like the idealistic boomers birth the alienated materialistic Gen X, who in turn create the sheltered and, as Strauss and Neil mistakenly predicted, leaderly millennials, and it goes on after that.
I'm not even gonna fucking try to fucking read this chart.
They trace us back to the Middle Ages, and the 1990s predicted America would have a massive political crisis on the scale of the American Revolution, Civil War, or World War II in the 2020s. The second model is the Church and Hackett-Fisher model, which my loyal fans are probably vomiting right now from having heard way too much before about in my previous videos. David Hackett-Fisher, in his brilliant book The Great Wave, showed how societies go through periodic collapses every few centuries, driven by declines in wages caused by population growth and globalization. The most recent examples in the European world, depending on
I'm so confused by this paragraph. I just read the paragraph over like 3 times. The world wars were savage and genocidal in East Europe while being more civilized and tame in the West because they didn't industrialize fast enough. Okay. I don't even know what this paragraph is saying.
how you count were World War I or the French Revolution. Peter Turchin expanded upon this theory beautifully, creating a coherent theory of how they work, showing how they happen roughly every 250 years, going back into the Bronze Age.
God, he's fucking beaming these brilliant charts so fast. This is like the fucking 7th chart he's showed in like the past fucking minute, dude. Oh my god. Okay. All right. Cool.
theory beautifully, creating a coherent theory of how they work, showing how they happen roughly every 250 years going back into the Bronze Age, and then making computer models which, using his inputs, were able to predict when historic crises like the Black Death, wars of religion, Russian revolutions, and the like on the timescales they actually happened at. His models in 2010 predicted the US would have a horrifying crisis in the 2020s. The final model is that...
I think this guy is just too smart for us. I think his brain is too above us that I just cannot process the amount of things he's showing on the screen.
By Spengler, Carol Quigley, Amory de Riacourt, and Fabry. For reference, 2 of those authors are some of the most respected of the last century. If the Strauss-House cycles take 80 years to play out and Church and Fisher take 250 years, then the Spengler-Amory ones take 2,500. For each of these theories, I'm having a text wall to explain their intricacies, but in their models, civilizations go through life cycles starting in spring and ending in winter, largely in which civilization loses its vigor due to the world changing and declines in religiosity. However, all these authors say roughly the same thing. They say the West in its current philosophic evolution is in the same place as ancient Rome was in roughly 100 BC. Fabry and Amory de Riacourt have wrote very powerful books that break this down on a really fascinating level. To simplify, like the late Roman Republic, we see a world largely dominated by a single superpower republic, with turbulent internal politics and declining belief in social institutions. Instead is the rise of extremely rich, strong men who lead the urbanized, atomized, and impoverished population with promises to fix everything. Religion has declined precipitously and the economy is centralized, resulting in most people working for some megacorporation. Local cultures have been smashed by the globalizing influence of the dominant one. The previously massive difference between political parties, the optimares and populares in Rome's case, have since been transcended by cults of personality. As you can probably tell, I want to talk about this all day, but this rabbit hole goes so much deeper, and thus I'll make some video in the near future about Is America the Next Rome, where I go into greater detail about this. As people, we swim in the ocean of the incentive structures created by the physical and ideological world around us. In the same way that those fish are mostly water that came from the sea around them, it's difficult for us to see how our environments created us and how we act. The Americans of today who want to destroy white men from curriculums are descendants of the men who fought in the beaches of Normandy within living memory. However, the way our society is set up...
The Americans today who want to destroy white men from curriculums? He even phrases it weird. To destroy white men from curriculums.
Incentivizes Americans to hate each other. In order to understand how America could have a civil war, we have to see the incentives of what pushes Americans to feel desperate enough to turn on their own people. The answer I'm going to give is that Americans today live poor and sad lives, which makes them feel the need to turn to violence for any hope of changing anything. This might sound strange from historic standards, where it's normal to see populations starve or in complete poverty, but pain is pain, and thus still painful, and the America of today has serious problems. As I've said more clearly in this video, normal Americans have seen their standards of living decline precipitously over the last 50 years, as wages have stayed the same while the cost of living has gone up. Just look at The Simpsons or stuff like John Hughes movies, where working class characters have multiple children, own their homes, and go on vacation as norms in the 1980s, which is unimaginable today even for young upper middle class people. As I've described in these videos as well, the collapses in social communities and amounts of sex among Americans create a restless, angry, and crazy population. Humans are by nature sexual, which is unimaginable today even for young upper middle class people. As I've described in these videos as well, the collapses in social communities and amounts of sex among Americans create a restless...
I can't even tell what the fuck he's saying. He talks so fast.
People. As I've described in these videos as well, the collapses in social communities and amounts of sex among Americans create
a collapse of social communities? I have no fucking clue what he says there.
Described in these videos as well, the collapses in social communities and amounts of sex among Americans create a restless...
And then what does he say? A mass of sex?
Angry and crazy population. Humans are by nature sex.
Americans are going crazy because they're having too much sex. That's the thing that's led to societal collapse, man. Guys, if you want to save America, stop having sex now. Oh, wait. No, we want to destroy America. Have lots of sex. Have endless sex. Do not ever stop having sex. Have sex with everyone. We must destroy America. This is a holy duty.
Sexual and social beings. Once you remove the ability to have children, which almost no young people can afford today, Enter relationships or imbalanced social communities, societies lose their way and descend into barbarism and tribalism. These factors are most heavily concentrated among young men, which are the demographic you least want to piss off. In many ways, the fate of a country depends on how it treats its young men, who with their boundless testosterone and energy push forwards in any direction they can. An excess of young men must either push outwards as a team or else start to kill itself.
He's basically just saying, like, he's literally just saying, like, you better treat us young men well, or we're gonna do a fascism. Oh my god, dude. Okay, we have another chart. How the nations with the young... Oh my god.
The reason most societies marry couples off at age 15 in arranged marriages is to make sure young men become sexually satisfied and stakeholders in society as fast as possible.
Okay. Yeah, the only reason anyone would ever want to succeed or accomplish anything is just to have sex. That's the only thing. What? The West stopped arranging marriages and started having a sexual marketplace around 1000 AD, after which the West has seen permanent progress. Meanwhile, societies that have given young elite males endless sexual opportunities without struggle have seen decay and decadence due to lack of incentive to improvement. Just ignoring all the weirdness of that, I'm pretty sure the West has had, after 1000 AD, the West had plenty of arranged marriages. Like, I'm not like a historian of the medieval times or anything, but I'm pretty sure women did not have any role in, or almost any role in picking who they wanted to be with. Maybe he means the men had, like, a bit more competition, but still, no, not really. Like, what a fucking insane theory. So he's basically saying the reason the West is reached its greatness is because men in the West were allowed to compete over who to have sex with. That's it. Oh. Is reminder that this guy has a wife and wants kids, I think, lol. No, he does not have a wife. He actually made a fucking incredible tweet about how he was watching R. Kelly and how he abused all this women, and then he started talking about how all the girls that he apparently meets on Tinder when they go on dates with him apparently keep trying to use him to gain their to assist their own media influencing careers. So, and it's just so funny to me, the idea that of all the people you would use to advance your media career, it would be this guy. And also just the fact that this just keeps happening to him, apparently. So yeah, I don't think he's in a relationship. And he's also, I think he's made like dating red pill videos, like why modern dating is broken. So yeah.
At the cost of the society's creativity and social mobility. Due to how dating apps work, young men today are having less sex, they make less money than young women, they are told by feminism their masculinity is toxic, and they are shown no options by society either towards manliness and honor or a place in society. I couldn't have invented better conditions for an angry population to make perfect army fodder.
He's basically saying that this is feminism's fault, right? This is what he's saying quite specifically. He's saying this is social justice's fault. This is feminism's fault. You're alienating men. You're creating, you're making them into fascists. The logical conclusion to what he's saying, of course, is to end social justice, end, feminism, which of course, is horrific and a horrific idea, obviously. But yeah, this person is the kind of person that like people like Vosh are trying to fucking appeal to. You know, it's just insane that you would try to appeal to these people who are like, if you get too progressive, I'm gonna join the Proud Boys. It's like, it's insane. And this guy has almost 500k subs, and he gets like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views per video. He's just, men are watching this and they're like, yeah, that's true, I am, yeah, but you better give me my rights back. When men already have all the fucking rights they need, it's just that things are actually becoming a little bit more equal, finally.
Also, unlike other countries, the US does have a lot of young men, with the largest young population in any developed nation and the lowest average age in any developed nation. If young men are the top demographic for civil wars, the other is, as Turchin calls them, elite aspirants. These are the people like entrepreneurs, officers in the army, doctors, academics, and other categories of upper middle class or upper class people who are trying to gain outsized power and influence in society. In an era of good wages, this social class is generally satisfied, thus creating low political stress. However, in our era of automation, globalization, immigration, and about 5 other things that push down wages, getting a college degree or even a PhD won't guarantee a good life. Even an Ivy League degree in most cases will lead to a life of soul-crushing corporate work. In all honesty, out of my personal experience, the only people who have good careers today are those who are self-employed like CEOs, freelancers, or influencers, since they aren't part of the problem of labor being so cheap today. People often ask me why social justice, a movement built around helping the downtrodden, is so concentrated among the upper middle classes. And the answer is that it's built around frustrated elite aspirants who want to use social justice as a technique to get their social category higher social status in an age when that's incredibly difficult. I've spoken in these videos about how the political divide in today's America is largely that between the college-educated and the non.
So they advocate for social justice to advance their own careers and their own lives. Okay, I mean, Andrew Tate was like by far like the single most popular media figure in the world for a while. There is far more money and far more success in being a right-wing grifter than there is in being a left-wing commentator. There just is.
College-educated elite. All of the left's policies today, when you boil it down, as I explained in this text wall, exist to benefit the college-educated and to establish agendas that fit their worldview and self-interest.
The left supports placing college-educated social workers. Prefers using college-educated.
You can see this in how they're planning on forgiving student debt. The right, meanwhile, is an alliance of the non-college educated groups like the army, businessmen, and religious interests who also push those groups' interests. Both pick a group from lower down in the social hierarchy as their foot soldiers and whose interests...
By the way, the idea that Republicans have like a broader appeal to the working class than Democrats is not true. I'm pretty sure that Democrats have a higher percentage of working class, non-college educated voters that voted for them than voted for Republicans. And I think actually when you get to college education, there is actually a higher rate of right-wing voters. No, not college education if you're not working class. Like if you're working class, you're more likely to vote for Democrat, while if you're not working class, you're more likely to vote for Republicans. This isn't to say the Democrats are good, but they do have at least somewhat more appeal than the right-wingers.
Push secondarily, whether ethnic or sexual minorities in the case of the left, or the white working classes in the case of the right. The left wants to put its people in power through every institution needing to have quotas of certain oppressed groups, as well as hiring oppression priests or equity employees, as well as more government regulations. On the right side, it's from shutting off immigration, tariffs, less regulations, and indirectly from having less women in the workforce. Both political sides have moved further to the extreme. This isn't social opportunities diminish inside these factions that are trying to seize power. There are internal struggles as people try to prove their purity and thus show their greater worth due to their loyalty. This process will continue as it already has. I'm extremely confident that the US and the world in general will experience a giant financial crash over the next 2 years, which will in turn result in pushing the many already struggling young people into degrading poverty, thus resulting in them becoming perfect targets for rebellion and radicalism. Honestly, when I look at incels, the first thing I think is them just being potential foot soldiers if ever I want to form a war band. There are a couple...
What did you just say? Did you just say he wants to form a war band of incels? What the fuck, dude? Oh my god, dude.
Factors that historically determine who wins civil wars with almost ironclad certainty. I'm going to go through these here as a brief way to determine who would win in any possible coming conflict. The first factor, and by a truly massive factor that's impossible to overstate, is the military. In civil wars in which a nation has a professional, good quality military, the side that the army goes with will predict who will win the civil war with frightening accuracy. This is because the difference between trained and untrained soldiers in combat is so massive that if one side can train its soldiers, it cannot lose. The Russian and French revolutions only worked since the army refused to follow the orders to shoot the rebels and instead sided with the rebels. Alternately, look at the Spanish Civil War where the left-wing nationals controlled almost all of Spain, but then the North African-based fascist army was able to almost single-handedly win the Civil War against them from carving across the country.
I mean, he's not necessarily wrong on that. Like, if there ever was an American Civil War or whatever, which, who knows, if there was a revolution, for example, the only chance the U.S. military would side with the rebels is if things got really, really bad for even people in the military and their families, which was the case in France and was the case in Russia, which both countries were in absolute shambles by the time revolutions happened in those countries.
The U.S. military has historically always tilted right. There aren't good statistics for the last 10 years, but I see very little evidence that things would change. It hasn't been a completely massive tilt historically, but something to consider is that as the left grows more radical, it becomes more anti-military and against the values that hold the military together, like honor, discipline, and duty. Meanwhile, the right...
By the way, if anyone has any stupid videos worth reacting to, just let me know. Send something in the chat. Give me a synopsis of what the video is, and maybe I will watch it.
As it becomes more radical, it becomes more markedly militaristic and pro-military. Thus, in a process of radicalization, as will almost certainly happen, we'd expect the army to fall into a more right-wing sphere. Officers, or those who provide leadership and make the decisions for what political side their units would choose, tilt significantly more conservative as well, more so than the rest of the military. Likewise, a significant percentage of the left-wingers in the military are ethnic minorities who are divided between different military units and thus unable to reach critical mass to form their own military units. Likewise, ethnic minorities tend to side with the left since they're scared of the dominant culture, which tends to be encapsulated by the right, and often due to social agendas pushed by the left, such as homosexuality, abortion, or transsexuality as abominations. The Biden administration has placed many left-wingers in high positions in the military, but I simply cannot see their officers following orders to support a leftist side in civil war. For the most part, the military would go right, with an exception being National Guards of left-wing states like California or New York. However, even in this case, conservative states tend to have larger National Guards than progressive ones. The second factor being control of resources, notably the necessary ones like food, energy, and the like. In short terms, if a side can control these, it can just shut off the power and food to starve out its opponents, destroying even the ability to stand up straight, let alone wage war. Here, the right has a very strong advantage. When you strip away all factors, the political division in America is that between city and countryside, and the countryside produces literally everything the cities consume, whether food, oil, electricity, in many cases, water, and the like. Since all rural areas in America are conservative, it's incredibly easy to see them just surround and blockade cities, cutting them off from any resources. Even on a broader geographic level, the conservative states are a giant central block, while the blue states are on either side of the continent. The blue bubbles in between, like Chicago, Minneapolis, New Mexico, or Colorado, are surrounded on all sides by hundreds of miles of red territory that would almost certainly immediately consume them. I think this is probably one of the biggest factors, where the right is a single geographic entity encompassing the vast majority of the country. Meanwhile, the left controls various islands of territory, as well as territory on each coast. But even those long coastal strips are remarkably easy to divide, split up, and keep them from coordinating. So you'd have a central right-wing command in all likelihood, while the various left-wing ones would be split between a New York command, a Boston command, a Washington, D.C. command, a San Francisco command, a Seattle command. That would make it incredibly difficult for the left to coordinate, while the right could just surround and consume them. The third factor is culture, or what side can muster a tough group of fighting men who will fight fanatically for their cause. In the Russian Civil War, the Bolsheviks started out...
I think he's just forgetting about, yeah, like population density, like the fact that the cities and stuff are far more filled with people. But yeah, I don't really know if watching this is even productive or will accomplish anything. It's mostly just for the memes, but honestly, like, maybe I'll watch a couple more minutes, but like this is kind of just stupid at this point. Like,
with something like 2% of the support of the population, but they were able to maintain the most internal unity among their coalition, literally shooting any dissenters, thus resulting in the chaos that came with the fall of Tsarist society. John Haidt did a series of studies in his wonderful book, The Righteous Mind, about how almost all cultures follow 6 values in their ideologies, whether harm, liberty, fairness, purity, loyalty, or authority. The first 3 are dividing values, which basically split apart society to the benefit of the individual, and the latter 3 are unifying values, which weaken the individual for the group's benefit. Most societies in history are very high on unifying values and low in dividing, either since they were under the rule of cruel autocracies who crushed the individual, or their societies were obsessed with survival of the group with little value attached to the individual. This is the way societies in Africa and Asia often are, being very collectivist.
what is this fucking map? What the fuck is this map, dude? Oh my god, dude. What does that say? Animosity? Anxiety? Dude, that's a fucking wild map. Oh my god, dude. I think this is from a video called, like, The Emotions That Drive Societies or whatever. Like, what the fuck? That video might actually be worth fucking watching because, like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't tend to watch reactionary content, not gonna lie. I don't either. I never watch any of this shit, but you know, like for like a stream type thing, it can be like funny, I guess. I don't know, if you just want to feel like you're in a fucking fever dream. You want to react to war graphics content? I don't know what that is. If it's funny and stupid, then maybe. The main things I like to react to are like, if I'm not making a video about it, is like, what is this video saying wrong? Why is it wrong? What is the damage it's causing? But yeah, with this video, it's just like, it's just a fucking fever dream.
The Western right tends to be pretty balanced between unifying and dividing values. Meanwhile, you see the Western left being extremely high in value harm, and to lesser degrees liberty and fairness. You'll hear right-wingers pull on values like honor, courage, loyalty to nation, and respect for authority that you just don't see left-wingers pull on. The bourgeois Western left has a really poor track record of keeping together coalitions because they just don't have the values to glue together unity. The communists are an exception, but strangely enough, they'd be classified as social conservatives today. Communist countries were very patriarchal, banned abortion and homosexuality, and demanded their populations follow their inherited values while praising courage, discipline, and manliness. Meanwhile,
I love, first of all, he's saying like communist countries. He's saying it as like this monolithic, just communism inherently is socially conservative, which is not true at all, at least relatively. First of all, it's not inherently socially conservative, and secondly, it's not even in reality all that socially conservative. The USSR decriminalized homosexuality for several years, I think for about a decade, and the Russian SSR and the Ukrainian SSR, and yes, they did outlaw it after that, and it remained outlawed. But abortion was allowed in the 50s, which was earlier than many countries in the world. Also, women were emancipated to a great degree in the 1920s. Also, I believe in the either in the Weimar Republic or the USSR, there was even studies about trans people that were going on. Like before things got outlawed, there were like studies being done into trying to understand transsexuals and where they're coming from, you know. So yeah, it's and then I think Cuba was the first country in Latin America to allow abortion. What else? Cuba today has like the most advanced LGBTQ laws in the world. I've heard this many times. It has the most advanced LGBTQ laws in the world, from what I've heard. I haven't read their actual laws. I believe if you kick your kid out of the house for being LGBTQ, it's a crime in Cuba. You get arrested for that. In China, I believe things are becoming a lot more progressive with gays. I may not be accurate on that. If someone has you know something contrary to say, then do let me know. But homosexuality was rebanned in the USSR, though. We got to take the L for that. Did I not say that? I'm pretty sure I mentioned that. Yeah, in my Innovations of the USSR video, I said it was one of the first to decriminalize homosexuality, but that's not true. There was actually many countries that did it before that. And the first country was the French Revolution. I want to make a video about the French Revolution because today it's portrayed as this thing that just went out of control and, you know, it sucked. It was fucking incredible what it did for its time. There were so many incredible things that it did for its time that I want to make a video about, because the French Revolution, it's like, it's so funny because today we lionize the American Revolution as this great, you know, victory of freedom and democracy or whatever, when it was not at all. That was not what the American Revolution was at all. The American Revolution was just the people, the elites wanting to own their own imperialist government rather than have it be dictated by the UK. That was what the American Revolution was. So yeah, French Revolution, very fascinating. Obviously things got very violent and went over the top. Because like with the USSR, reactionaries took advantage of things and used it to get decent, good people occasionally executed, but it also accomplished a tremendous amount. Can you react to the 16-minute propaganda piece by the armchair historian about life in East Germany? I don't know anything about East Germany. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but East Germany is like not something I'm an expert on or know much about to be able to be like, this is bullshit. I know fellow traveler knows a good amount about East Germany, and there's another guy like Socialist Swan, I believe is his name. He also knows a lot about East Germany. I'll be right back in a couple minutes. Oh, wait. Yeah, Socialist Swan is the British Mal who has a great series about. Yeah, I haven't watched those videos, but he seems really cool. I think he recently made a video talking about why he's gone. Um, yeah, it's sad because I talk about this briefly in my BeardTube video. It's just that one of the big things is that there's just not nearly the same money in BeardTube, obviously. Because first of all, the algorithm isn't going to promote this kind of content, the BeardTube content. And secondly, people are so propagandized to, you know, hate tankies, hate the USSR, hate all socialist states, that if you say any of this shit, they'll see that and they'll just be like, oh my god, this guy's a tanky. And then they'll just, you know, unsubscribe. So that's a big element of it. It's just not like, it's not a very sustainable path for a lot of people. Occasionally you'll break through and, you know, you can succeed, but it's hard. It's hard to make this kind of content. While you usually also have to be working other jobs at the same time to also keep producing this kind of content, because doing this stuff alone isn't usually enough for a lot of people. So I see so many BreadTube channels die out. Tavrish Endymion is a really sad one because his videos are so good. They're amazing. So yeah, if you want to support this channel and make sure it doesn't end up like so many other BeardTube channels do, please, you know, follow me on Patreon or support me with a super chat or a YouTube membership. But yeah, that's why I made my BeardTube video in part, is I just wanted to give attention to all these other channels.
Modern American left is incapable of holding a coalition or army together since they view any standards or hierarchies as oppressive. The idea of social justice warriors...
What the fuck? He's literally framing all leftists as anarchists. The modern left is unable to hold together because they view all hierarchies as oppressive. There's a lot more to it than just that. I don't even disagree that the left can't fucking get their shit together in a lot of ways. But I mean, that's just because there's so many disagreements on everything. And for some people, if you have the slightest disagreement with someone on something in any way, some people will be like, you're not a leftist, fuck you, die, kill yourself, and all that shit. So like, especially MLs, you know, everyone fucking hates us. Everyone fucking not everyone, but a lot of people. So it's like, it's hard. All the propaganda and shit, it's hard.
Coordinating an army to wage war is so laughable, even left-wingers can make comedy skits about it. Just look at Chaz or the Seattle secessionist state that ran out of food within 16 hours of starting, and within a day devolved into a dictatorship run by a SoundCloud rapper. Something else to consider is to look at how the left continually eats its own factions in radicalism, while the right...
That, by the way, is a completely fake picture. This picture is not real. This didn't actually happen. This was like made up by some like fascist dude, and now today it's like everyone thinks it's a real picture. It's not.
Right just does not. And you can see this today where the left does cancel culture, where it just continually eats the members who aren't pure enough of its own faction. And you see that across history, where the left continually split into Marxist-Leninists, Trotskyites, anarchists who could not get along and would have civil wars amongst themselves, and you just do not see that in the right. You do not see right-wingers turn on their own people. Left-wing military...
Okay, to a certain extent, he is objectively true about that. He is absolutely not wrong that right-wingers coalesce much more effectively than left-wingers. It's not completely true. Like, Hitler did the Night of the Long Knives. He's completely missing a huge aspect, which is actually he had a lot of the more moderate right-wingers murdered. The Strasserites and the like. Which picture is the real one? The one on the left, the one where Yezhov isn't missing. But, I mean, he is right that the right does coalesce more effectively in a lot of ways than the left does these days.
Militaries of all sorts underperform militarily. Just compare how the Soviet Union went through ideological purges before World War I, with ideological infighting being the norm in the left and purging its own population.
What? What did you just say?
That in the right. You do not see right-wingers turn on their own people. Left-wing militaries of all sorts underperform militarily. Just compare how the Soviet Union went through ideological purges before World War I, with
ideological purges through World War One. I think he means World War II. The USSR did not exist before World War One.
infighting being the norm in the left and purging its own population. Meanwhile, fascist Japan or Germany did not purge their own populations, but instead turned their hatred at other groups and fought terrifyingly well for nations their size.
He's just so completely missing shit, which is actually that the Nazi Germany did purge its own people. It purged communists, it purged, homosexuals, it purged Jews.
Across history, unless there's a significant technological or administrative difference, the rural side in the conflict will always beat the urban one. Connected to the first point, the right has a much more martial culture. I once heard a joke on a left-wing late-night TV show that one side in America brings guns into battle and the other brings replica katanas. One cannot be a hunter in the modern left. The modern left literally views masculinity and aggression as toxic and to be removed from society. For those that don't read history, societies that martial warrior cultures lose and get conquered. When you get down to it, the sides that win wars are those that can convince young men to fight hardest for them. As the left gets more radical, it will alienate young men, and very much more so young men of good military fiber, who will go to the right. Young men are insecure and trying to find their way in the world, and so feminism's emphasis on toxic masculinity will breed a horrifying counter-reaction, about which I will make a future video. This YouTube channel's viewership is over 90% young men, and so tell me this. If you're picking what side you will fight
I wonder why.
and die for, will a speech on how we need to empower genderqueer people of color inspire you? Or would you prefer to hear one on how you will fight for honor in God and country? How you will be heroes and burn your enemies out of their holes, forward to glory for king until your last dying breath? Between military resources, centralized geography, and culture, I think we've covered the really important variables. However, the left still has some advantages. The major centers of technology, culture, and capital are in left-wing hands. However, I largely think that these are non-factors. As Mao Zedong said, power comes from the barrel of a...
He was basically all but openly, inciting young white dudes to openly rise in, a fascist rebellion to stamp out social justice. That's pretty much what he's fucking doing, which is just, insane.
gun, and the left-wingers can have Hollywood, the banks, and Apple. But if those people don't have the missiles or the electricity, they can't fight. I often hear people say that the left has some massive financial or technological advantage that would give them victory. The real technological difference in red and blue states is nil, and the economic and population size of both is the same. The left would be physically incapable of hiring mercenaries that would be able to match the U.S. military, and the top
He just said the population size of the right compared to the left is the same. That is just not true at all.
American mercenary companies would probably end up siding with the right anyway. Likewise, the division among young people was likely smaller than people would think, and as said before, the right would have a much stronger pull on the young demographic that matters for civil wars, aggressive young men. Writing the script, I just kept on being confused on how this could possibly be a civil war. When it comes to actual military punching ability, one side has so much more power than the other that it almost seems like a joke. How could we have gotten to the point where it looks like we're on the verge of a civil war between two sides that are so fundamentally mismatched? After giving it some thought, it actually makes sense from a very limited perspective of what makes our era of history special. I remember talking to one of my best friends, YouTuber JJ McCullough, about how the political compass isn't a great metric for looking at history, since basically everyone before the Industrial Revolution would be conservative authoritarian. This is since in the pre-industrial world, half of children died before age 15. It wasn't uncommon for 1/3 of nations to die in disease and war over a couple decades. War was omnipresent and a bunch of other things like that. People cared about two things, that their group survived and that they did. Societies maxed out the unifying social values since everyone had to work together, so their culture wasn't enslaved and murdered. This is why heresy was so scary in the Middle Ages.
His conservative traditionalism is just so obvious in that he like thinks that young men are like the only demographic that can fight. Like, women can fight too, you know, and they actually do that significantly in revolutions. In World War II, there was a sniper lady named Lyudmila Pavlichenko who killed hundreds and hundreds of German soldiers. Like, plenty of women snipers fought in World War II for the USSR and, like, you know, kicked ass. JJ McCullough. I don't know who that is. Is he a freak? I'm certain he's a fucking freak if he's fucking friends with this guy.
Why the Romans or Russians made their soldiers serve for 25 years. However, with the mass wealth that came with the world wars, it removed those various social pressures. In the wealthiest country in the world, America, it led to the conclusion that we'd be better off if we removed all the survival-based values and just chilled together, not judging, and everything would still work out. This is the hippie view, of baby boomers raised in comfort who revert back to tribal norms, of hanging out in groups, smoking weed, not paying attention to time, so their basic norms are met. The American left doesn't view the world in survival terms, it hasn't had to. For people's collective memories, it matches the left's story of continual progress, greater freedom, and the right story of the omnipresence of war, plague, and famine seems more foolish. Thus, the left simply does not have the values to wage war, organized groups, or the like. A left-winger would never write a report like this since they wouldn't view it in the same cold terms as me, instead talking about women, minorities, and young people feeling inspired to cast off oppressive structures at once. However, in the post-scarcity, post-World War II world, people still wanted to compete for status, and in a world of plenty, and in a fundamentally Christian society, that is shown through generosity and humility, which the modern left now does to the greatest degree possible. However, without the external pressures of survival and with their view of history as a permanent arc of progress, left-wingers don't have the intellectual ability to think critically about being crushed by the right in a conflict. This is why they push for various extremist measures, because the idea that they could just lose and die and the arc of history loses is just impossible for them. There was a time in my life in which I hung out in radical left-wing circles because I lived in downtown Philadelphia, and a lot of my best friends and family members were radical left-wingers. And one of the things that always shocked me was that they would push for radical social change or revolution, and I would just think, you guys are playing the absolute worst game you could. Because if the left pulls a revolution now, the right just pulls out the army and pulls out the electricity and crushes them. And left-wingers, because they only hang out in insulated social circles of people like them, they don't realize that. I think the country will just join into a massive revolution to join them. And left-wingers don't seem to realize most Americans support what their agendas are. Most Americans support rights for gay people or black people or improved quality of life for the poor and all of that stuff. And as a right-winger, most of the right-wingers I know don't care that much about climate change per se. They care that any left-wing acceptance of climate change immediately results in more state planning. And I just don't understand why left-wingers don't play a softer hand to get their policies done. Since the left believes that progress is a continuous upwards trajectory, when they push for things, no matter how radical, they imagine they must succeed, even if real terms, they're...
Left-wingers don't play a softer hand because... There's so much to say to all the things he's saying. I don't even know where to start. Like, the idea of a revolution is not because we're getting the things we want. It's because we're not getting the things we want. And also, even if we got the things we wanted, even if we got everything we could possibly want in this country, it would still be a social democracy. And a social democracy still functions under the system of imperialism, which means that we are still taking resources from the third world. We're still poaching the third world. We're still destroying the third world. So the reason that people push for more, don't play a softer hand, some people, is because capitalism as a system needs to be overturned. The whole system of capitalism, the people who play a harder hand, that's what they believe, is that capitalism as a whole needs to be overturned. It's not that complicated. It's not just about gay rights or, you know, trans rights or more rights for minorities. Those are liberal things, but you want more than that. Because even if you get those things under capitalism, it can be reversed at any time. Can you react to Lunoy's video about how the U.S. supported Pol Pot, his atrocities, and the Khmer Rouge to get back at Vietnam for the U.S.'s humiliating loss in the Vietnam War? I mean, I don't know anything about Pol Pot. or the Khmer Rouge. If you still think it would be worthwhile to watch. What do you mean, Kem? Guns immediately disintegrate on contact if you have too much estrogen in your veins. True. That's true. If you're a woman and you touch a gun, it collapses.
You're just walking into a slaughter. Predicting details of the future is hard. I can say something bad will happen over the next few years, but it's difficult to specify beyond a certain range since chaos gets in the way. I'm going to combine looking at modern conditions with historical precedent to establish a sort of fantasy scenario that I can't even pretend to say will be the future, but could be an option. The previous civil wars in English-speaking history have followed similar patterns, and I will tease them out here to establish a scenario. Peter Turchin has shown how the same countries often follow similar patterns in political crises centuries apart. Let's start with the ruling faction, which in every case has ended up being the losing winner, and curiously are all on the anti-business side and try to use the government to push their agendas more aggressively, whether the Royalists in the British Civil War, the British in the American Revolution, or the South in the American Civil War are in power. They push various unpopular political programs for their ideological agenda, while struggling bitterly to balance between moderates and radicals inside their faction. Political tensions are high, but haven't burnt into flames yet. There were inflaming events beforehand that make both sides angry, but these haven't triggered war yet. This is similar to the modern Biden administration right now. This group either has its power challenged or pushes the other side in a way that makes it react violently. The equivalent would either be something like that the Republicans win the presidency or totally ban abortion, thus causing mass rebellions in left-wing dominated cities. A Chaz, but 20 times the size. The other side, being the left, tries to do something like stack the Supreme Court, thus resulting in army units in Kentucky refusing to follow orders, which spreads like wildfire. The difference between this crisis and the ones before is that there was a degree of military competition between the Royalists and parliamentarians, the American rebels and the British, or the Confederacy and the Union that's absent today. In each case, both sides had martial traditions, military men, ownership of resources, and large pieces of land. That's not the case today. If we have a civil war between the right and the left will just win. It's a matter of how long...
He's straight up showing a picture of people playing paintball.
it takes, and I see two different kinds of scenarios that can play out. The first scenario is a slow burn, in which, say for whatever reason, left-wing militias seize control over the inner cities and establish their own societies. Again, for whatever reason, whether lack of political will, bad timing, or a left-wing presidency, the right does not crack down upon them. We now see a conflict between the right and left-wing militias, fought in gang violence in American cities, as we see mass depopulation of the countryside. Meanwhile, the far right gets more influence over the army and in rural areas. America becomes slowly shittier in this world. The country becomes poorer and supply chains can't keep up. In the best case scenario, and probably most likely, radical leftists gradually make a fool of themselves and lose all electoral power. After several years, a populist right-wing president seizes power and brings the nation to a new positive direction. This scenario is a lot to say for it, in my opinion, given that the US is a lot less desperate than other similar eras of history, since no one will starve in America. And Americans tend to be pretty moderate people politically, as the historical record shows as well. The more radical scenario is that the left goes more radical more quickly. The US Army feels threatened and then launches what amounts to a coup, cleaning and killing left-wing cities, restructuring society so the left cannot have power again. This kind of scenario is more plausible than you might imagine, given how America is becoming so politically radicalized that it's entirely possible blood will come. In some ways, it seems like the more likely option. Americans are becoming so unhinged, I don't know by what kinds of peaceful methods they could calm down. On top of this, there's a massive precedent for this sort of thing when unhinged urban leftists cause revolutions only to have the army immediately crush them. Look at France, Germany, Spain, Indonesia, Argentina, Hungary, Chile, and the like. The norm, which...
Why is he showing a picture of Castro who completely kicked ass when talking about, like, revolutions backfiring?
Might be different given how strong America's institutions are, so the army kills large numbers of the leftist elite and the rest go quiet. The nation then becomes a conservative military dictatorship for a decade on average, before switching back to democracy. Something to consider is that the military is by far the most loved and respected institution in America.
That is a fucking cursed. That is an absolutely cursed chart. And if that chart is remotely an accurate representation of how Americans feel about the military, then we're fucking doomed. Holy shit. People always point to, like, people trusting Congress at 11% to give the implication that that Americans are actually super populist and, like, left wing and hate the direction the country's going. But the only reason that the approval rating of Congress is so low is simply because the other side is usually doing something to piss that person off, which is why they give such a low rating. But if you fucking look at this shit, the military, 74% approval rating, according to this poll. I don't know if this is like the most accurate poll, but it's from 5 years ago, so I don't know. That's wild, dude. Have you heard of the Night Witches? No, what the fuck are the Night Witches? They sound cool.
80% support, compared to Congress, the universities, and the media, which are all at 20%. And that makes a military dictatorship more plausible than you could probably imagine. An important fact to consider is that the more developed a country is, the more likely it is to go to right-wing totalitarianism and the less to the left. The only countries that go communist are feudal pre-industrial peasant ones like China, Vietnam, or Russia. Meanwhile, when Germany, Japan, Spain, and the like went authoritarian, they went for fascism. Not a single Western Christian country has gone for left-wing authoritarianism. Likewise, in almost all civil wars, whether with the Bolsheviks, Jacobins, Puritans, or radical Republicans, the most radical faction eats all the others due to its greater spirit of unity. If America has anything to worry about in its future, some form of aggressive, militaristic Christian fascism is probably it. What if all and thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that...
Alright then. JJ McCullough. Who the fuck is this guy? That is an there's nothing good that comes from someone who has this as their profile pic. That's an incredibly bad sign from the start. Learning about countries, cultures in Canada. What is a Christian country? What 20? Just going by the thumbnails, it doesn't look as bad as What If Altis, but who the fuck knows? If he's friends with What If Altis, then I assume it's not good. He runs agitprop for the Canadian Conservative Party in his videos. Okay, yeah. Well, he seems less interesting than What If Altist. Yeah, I mean, the problem with the Luna Oi video is I just don't know if I would have anything to add. Because again, I don't know anything about Pol Pot or the Khmer Rouge, so I don't know what I would actually have to add to watching a video like that in terms of additional commentary, you know? Like, if I'm watching a video, I want it to be something I can build on or, you know, break down, you know? Rather than just watching things passively. But if anyone has any videos about the USSR or China or America or Latin America, which are things I know a decent amount about, please do send them my way if they're bad. Even if I don't watch it tonight, I could watch it another time.
When I was a teenager, I had terrible allergies. They always got bad in the fall and were worse during the night, which they told me was because that's when pollen settles. September 10th was a miserable night for me, and when I woke up, I felt awful. My nose was stuffed and it was hard to breathe. My throat was sore and raw. I gargled repeatedly with mouthwash, but a terrible taste remained in my mouth. I had to get up early that day because my father, who usually drove me to school, was on Vancouver
God,
Island
who the fuck
going
cares?
on in the news. My mother turned the car radio to CK. It was simply difficult to comprehend. So the buildings were destroyed, like they were just completely gone now. I tried to wrap my brain around this idea, imagining a big open space where two giant skyscrapers had once been. It didn't seem possible. The three of us in the car said little, but continued to listen. "Let's go back. I want to see it on TV," I said. I was 17 years old, but felt very childlike and weak in that moment. The radio was such a primitive medium. I needed to see pictures of what was happening. My mom ignored me, obliviously. She held firm to the steering wheel, determined to continue the routine of more normal days. We heard about the Pentagon being hit as well. Although we would later see that the damage was quite minor, at the time it sounded apocalyptic. "There is going to be a war," my mother eventually said, and I believed her. We picked up a friend of my sister. We carpooled a lot in those days. She entered our car quietly and was silent for the trip. My mom dropped us off at school, Dr. Charles Best Secondary. It was named after a scientist who had been born in America. I always liked that fact because even in those days I was very pro-America. I ran to the cafeteria. The year before, our outgoing principal had bought a gigantic big screen TV so the kids could watch music videos as we ate. The TV was tuned to CNN and a crowd of kids had gathered around to watch it. The TV was showing footage of the towers collapsing. The gigantic towers had, in fact, completely gone away. My friend Zvonimir came into the cafeteria. He was from Croatia. Sensing the look of confusion on his face, I quickly tried to fill him in. "Planes have flown into the Twin Towers and destroyed them," I said to him, perhaps getting a slight perverse thrill out of getting to say such dramatic things. "Another plane has crashed into the Pentagon, and the White House has been evacuated, and they don't know where the president is." Zvonimir looked shocked. I had a twinge of self-consciousness as I realized that this was going to be one of those events where everybody remembered where they were when they heard the news, and I had just created Zvonimir's moment. As we watched the towers fall and fall again on the news replay, I tried to solve the mystery. I had developed a late interest in politics during my senior year of high school, and I tried to find comfort in the fact that I had the capacity to understand what was going on. I thought about Saddam Hussein, the great villain of the 1990s, but then I remembered that crazed gang of Muslim fundamentalists ruling Afghanistan who had been in the news a lot lately. There had been stories about them making non-Muslims wear special badges like the Jews in Nazi Germany and blowing up 1,000-year-old Buddhist statues. They were said to be allies with a guy called Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, this is like the most fucking boring video I've ever seen in my life. This guy thinks he has something like interesting to add when he's a lib who just knows nothing about anything. Ugh. War Graphics has a recent video on the dissolution of the USSR. My links don't seem to be working. Oh, okay.
It was the war.
Oh no, it's this fucking guy? It's Simon Whistler? Oh shit. Oh my god. That's amazing. I'm thinking about making a video about this guy. Oh, to save the Soviets, Russia's last communist coup attempt. Okay. I might watch that, but first I want to read up a bit more on that before I actually watch a video like that. Simon Whistler is a fucking fascinating character. He has like 12 YouTube channels or some shit, and I don't know if he actually writes any of the videos or if he just contracts out like his other people to write the videos and then he just does like he just speaks on top of it. It's very weird. I need to look more into him and potentially make a video about him. Yeah, it seems like most of McCullough's videos are like, a lot of it isn't even like political. Oh my god, I watched a video with my friend on stream about the Falun Gong by this YouTuber named Illuminati, and it was so fucking bad.
So a while ago, I made a video entitled, "They Tried to Get Me to Post Chinese Propaganda." It is one of my most favorite videos I have ever made. It is about the conflict between the government of China and a bizarre cult known as the Falun Gong. They are engaged in a very vicious propaganda war against one another, and their target is you, even if you don't realize it. And in my opinion, this conflict is very morally ambiguous. And anyone
This conflict is very morally ambiguous. Oh my god, that's incredible, dude. Falun Gong is like a far right, anti-homosexual, traditionalist, insane fucking movement. But of course, yeah, it's a complex situation. This is just gonna be the exact same video as the Illuminati video, where it's like, the enemy of your enemy is not your friend, as if China is like this anywhere near as bizarre and weird and bad as Falun Gong.
otherwise is lying. Like most sensible people, I have an enormous amount of contempt for the Chinese government. It is clearly a cruel dictatorship that I believe to be a force for bad in the world. China's leaders have a ton to answer for in terms of their handling of the coronavirus pandemic, their oppression of Hong Kong, their support of rogue regimes around the world, and the system.
What? What? Chinese leaders have a lot to answer for in terms of the coronavirus pandemic? What? Oh my god. China had the best quarantine procedures in the world for years. By far. Like, the best. I mean, to the point where they were arguably maybe a little over the top, because given that the rest of the world just did not go anywhere near as hard as China, it was inevitable that you couldn't do China's level of quarantine forever. Hey, Kawa. I assume he's talking about how there's speculation that the virus came from like a lab in Wuhan, which I think might have been like just completely debunked. But yeah, anyways. Let me see if I missed anything else really good there.
Their handling of the coronavirus pandemic, their oppression of Hong Kong, their support of rogue regimes around the world, and the systemic suppression of the rights of their own people. I think
rogue regimes around the world. And then the one thing he points to is North Korea, because that is literally like the one thing he could possibly point to. I think China has decent relations with Israel also, which is really lame and fucked up, I think. But like, other than that, it's like just North Korea. And like, North Korea is not a rogue regime. What the fuck does that mean? They're not invading other countries. They're not destroying other countries, you know? Like, didn't know China supported the US supporting rogue regimes. Yeah. My god, I fucking hate liberals, man. I hate liberals so fucking much. It's weird because it seems like some of the comments show up in Streamlabs and then others don't. It's weird. Anyways.
I think that probably the best thing that Donald Trump has done as president, and the thing that America's allies should be the most supportive of, are his efforts, however imperfect and bumbling, to contest the growth of China's economic and political power around the world. Now, all of that said, Falun Gong...
I fucking hate these fucking libs, man. I hate them so much. Oh my god, dude. This is just like the fucking insane video with Vosh I watched last time, where they live in this completely manufactured reality where China is like a bigger threat to the world than the US is. You can watch my most recent video. You know, China is not doing nearly as much to the world as the US has done. And even when you look to China's past, like, the worst thing they ever did, China, in terms of their foreign policy, was when they invaded Vietnam. And I think it was more of a border war, and I think around 50 to 100,000 Vietnamese died. They've had other more minor conflicts, but that was like their in my opinion, their big foreign policy fuck up. And but it was nowhere near compared to so many wars America has started or facilitated or supported. Yeah, last time the DPRK was in a war was 70 years ago. Exactly.
Is quite obviously not a good guy either. Falun Gong is a cult, straight up. It is led by a megalomaniac fraud known as Master Li Hongzhi, who claims to be an interdimensional being with supernatural powers. We will get into the specifics of Master Li's lunatic worldview in a bit, but for the time being, suffice it to say that Falun Gong unambiguously has all of your major culty characteristics. Master Li pushes an elaborate system of behavior and thought controls on his followers, which are known as Falun Dafa.
Falun Dafa is an advanced cultivation system that was created by Mr. Li Hongzhi. It originates from the Falun Dafa cultivation practice in the Buddha school and cultivates Jun Shan Ren, or truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, the supreme characteristics of the universe.
The basic gist is that Master Li puts some magical force inside of your tummy, which is known as the Fallen, and the Fallen lets you harness all of the world's positive energy, which is known as Gong.
The Falun that Master has planted at the lower abdominal area automatically absorbs energy from the universe, transforms the energy, and helps the practitioner to practice. When rotating counterclockwise, the Falun emits energy. It can correct all abnormal states and bring salvation to sentient beings.
Properly harnessing this energy, in turn, requires doing a lot of repetitive, mind-numbing meditation exercises, as spelled out in the Master's various books and videos and multi-day seminars. But it's all worth it, because Master Li says that those who prove their allegiance to Falun Dafa will eventually achieve superhuman levels of happiness, success, and health, just like him, the greatest man who has ever lived. Though it started in China, Master Li's outfit is currently based in this gigantic 400-acre compound in the scenic Catskills of New York. Here the Master lives with his most devoted followers who tend to his every whim and venerate him as a divine being.
When Li Hongzhi would speak, the way she looked at him was just like he was God. Because that's what these people believe, that Li Hongzhi is effectively God.
It's fascinating that a fascist death cult is operating in America, in New York. That's really fascinating. I wonder why they would be in America of all places. I wonder why nothing has been done about this fascist right-wing cult. Since America cares about like freedom and justice, you'd think that, maybe they'd be investigating this cult, seeing if there's any wrongdoing going on there. Weird.
They venerate him so much, in fact, that according to a recent groundbreaking investigation by NBC, they even allow him to pick out their romantic partners. No gay stuff, though. The Master is very against homosexuality. Falun Gong has only been around for less than 30 years, but it has been very successful and now has followers all over the world. Its greatest success has always been among Chinese immigrants, but it has started to make considerable inroads with people from other backgrounds as well. There are now even multi-generational Falun Gong families with children who have been born into the cult. Now, you may be wondering why we don't hear more about this. Why doesn't Falun Gong get the same sort of negative press that other cults do, like the Scientologists or NXIVM, or even comparatively milder things like CrossFit? Well, this is because Master Li has put together an incredibly sophisticated propaganda infrastructure, which is designed to obscure the reality of what he's up to. Like most cults, Falun Gong requires unpaid labor from its followers in order to test their faith, and Master Li uses this labor to staff his various propaganda outlets. Such outlets include...
Of course the liberal wouldn't dare suggest that maybe one of the reasons Falun Gong's had a lot of success is is because they're the most prominent like anti-China group. Of course that isn't why. It's because he has a really sophisticated propaganda network. There's no consideration that there also might be, the fact that the West doesn't want to do anything about Falun Gong. Why would they destroy it? I mean maybe they might, since Falun Gong has been getting more and more bad press now, maybe they will try to take down Falun Gong and hope something better rises in its place. Because Falun Gong is increasingly getting a bad reputation. But, yeah.
the Shen Yun Ballet Show, which targets middle-class women, several right-wing news outlets, most notably the Epic Times, which targets older men, and multiple YouTube and social media channels, which target millennials, like you. I will also note that they are not above just pitching themselves directly, either. For example, they sometimes just run straight-up ads for themselves on YouTube with no pretense whatsoever. Alright, now let us talk about how Falun Gong propaganda works. This requires a bit of understanding of Master Li's general view of the world, which goes something like this. The Chinese government is the single most evil thing in the entire world because it oppresses Master Li's religion and forced him into exile in America. But the Chinese government is also evil because it is communist. And the very idea of a Chinese communist is deeply offensive to Master Li's ultra-xenophobic sensibilities. You see, Master Li believes that every race was created by a different god, and therefore all the different races of the world should stay separate and never mingle or cross-contaminate with each other. He is quite infamously opposed to mixed-race people, who he considers to be spiritually defective. And in the next life, all of the different races will each live on their own planet, and we'll all be a lot happier. I believe this was an idea that Barney on The Simpsons once promoted as well.
I'm just saying that when we die, there's going to be a planet for the French, a planet for the Chinese, and we'll all be a lot happier.
Mr. Gumbo, you're upsetting me.
Oh, I'm not.
Anyway, the fact that the current government of China is communist is deeply repulsive to Master Li, not because of anything about communism in particular, but rather because it is a European ideology created by Europeans. The current rulers of China are thus literal demons from hell, dedicated to upsetting the correct order of the universe. China's true destiny is to purify itself of all foreign ideas, and indeed even most modern ones. This is a man who is fiercely anti-medicine and anti-science. His website even brags that at his compound in New York, there's barely a screw, nail, or metal joint to be found. Now, given the generally backwards-looking nature of his worldview, it may be unsurprising to learn that Master Li cribs a lot of his spirituality from ancient Chinese superstitions and folklore. And one traditional Chinese belief that he seems to be super into is this idea that our emotional and mental health is ultimately connected to the 5 essential organs of the human torso: the liver, the lungs, the heart, the kidneys, and the spleen. Meaning, as you become more emotionally and mentally strong, your torso organs get healthier too. And now, here comes the wild part. Since following Master Li's teachings brings Falun Gong practitioners to a state of near-divine...
This isn't nearly as bad as Illuminati's video on this so far. Like, she took like 10 minutes to like almost begin, like stop attacking China and almost just barely begin to start actually, you know, attacking Falun Gong. I don't know if you saw my other message earlier. I asked to watch Lao Y86. He's lib shit to near fascist. Yeah, for some reason some of the comments are just like not showing up in my chat. Oh, I had it as set to top chat for some reason. Okay, now I can see all comments. Very weird. That's so bizarre. Did I miss anything? He made a video on the Canadian Communist Party calling them a communist Indian monarchy. What the fuck? Okay. Yeah, please watch Lao Y86. Yeah, he's fucking terrible. Him and Serpent Zal are just like totally insane. I mean, like, probably every single fucking one of their videos are just basically, like, insane. I don't even know if I could choose one out of all of them because it's just the same thing, basically. Hey, Sparkle Squish, how you doing?
Emotional tranquility and spiritual well-being, it logically follows that they would have some of the best, most beautiful, most succulent torso organs in the world, and the demonic Chinese communists know this. So Falun Gong teaches that the communist devils have implemented a broad-scale program of murdering Falun Gong practitioners in order to harvest their world-class organs. The big muckety-mucks in the Chinese regime can then sell these organs at a premium on the black market, knowing how desirable they are. According to this one Falun Gong website, doctors in China will brag about having Falun Gong in stock, like they were Gucci handbags or something. What an outrage. Once you know these basic facts about how Master Li sees the world, it is very easy to tell if the criticism of the Chinese government that you're hearing is actually just Falun Gong propaganda. One very visible tick is making an obsessively big deal about the fact that China is run by a communist party. And by obsessive, I mean like mentioning it in every single reference to the government. Another tell is just portraying the oppression of the Falun Gong
which will always be described as a perfectly innocuous spiritual movement, as the single worst, most important human rights abuse that the Chinese government is committing. Now, Master Li's small community of followers in China have undeniably faced well-documented abuse at the hands of the Chinese regime, but when viewed in the context of, say, the oppression of the Chinese Muslims, it is very difficult to argue that this is even the most pressing religious liberty issue facing the country. But the biggest giveaway of all is just any mention of the organ harvesting conspiracy theory. Though the Chinese government has harvested the organs of executed prisoners in the past, this idea that they have some elaborate program of specifically harvesting the organs of Falun Gong practitioners is not a charge that has ever been credibly raised by anybody except for activists associated with Falun Gong in some way, which is because it is a charge that is ultimately grounded in what Falun Gong believes should be happening rather than what actually is. Okay, so where Falun Gong propaganda seems to be enjoying a great deal of success these days is in right-wing America. This is because their anti-communist, anti-China messaging syncs up quite well with what a lot of conservatives already believe, which is that communism is wicked and that the Chinese government is a force for bad in the world, which are both perfectly fine things to believe. I believe those things. The problem is that the Falun Gong does not believe that China already believe, which is because their anti-communist, anti-China messaging syncs up quite well with what a lot of conservatives already believe, which is that communism is wicked and that the Chinese government is a force for bad in the world, which are both perfectly fine things to believe. I believe those things. The problem is that the
communism is wicked. He says he believes that communism is wicked. Oh my god, dude. I hate libs, man. I hate them. And then again, the Chinese government is a force for bad in the world. That is just not connected to reality in any way, shape, or form. The Uyghur Muslims, I believe their persecution, their detainment is ended years ago. There were around 50,000 Uyghur Muslims who were detained on suspicions of like terrorist activity. There were reports of torture. I'm not saying no one's human rights were violated, but I mean that's like the main crime you can point to China having done compared to what the US has done just like in the past few years in Syria and Yemen. There's just no comparison. But he doesn't care. He's a lib. Communism bad.
Falun Gong does not believe that China's communist government is bad because of an objective analysis of their policies. No, they believe it is
an objective analysis of their policies? Dude, you don't know what the fuck. You have no clue what you're fucking talking about. You have a fucking American flag in your background next to your Canadian flag. Fascinating. He has a bunch of Asian memorabilia in his background, actually. It's weird.
Is bad because they think it is literally run by demonic spirits who are the...
Does he just has a fucking plate with like the US Department of Justice logo on it? What the fuck? He just straight up has a plate with like the fucking logo that like the Department of Justice uses on his wall? Dude, this guy's wild. I love this guy. That's wild, dude. That's fucking wild.
Primary embodiment of evil in this world, and since they believe this as a matter of religious principle, this means that their standards of evidence are not particularly high. This is very much the problem that has started to draw increasing negative attention to the leading news outlet of the Falun Gong movement, the Epoch Times. You've probably been seeing a lot of their ads lately because they have been spending an ungodly amount of money on YouTube advertising these days. Now, the Epoch Times has a sort of veneer of seriousness to it. You can browse through it and it won't seem all that weird at first glance. Relatively normal stories about politics and whatnot. But the extreme anti-China editorial position it takes, by virtue of the fact of who runs it, means that it is also...
Just with the fucking Illuminati Valley video, just like with Johnny Harris, these libs can never actually cover the whole story. They can never actually portray things in their reality to their sheer extent. Epoch Times is one of like countless media organizations and newspapers that do this. Epoch Times is just like the biggest, but there are countless more that operate under the Falun Gong that do this.
Very open-minded about all sorts of wild conspiracy theories. Most recently, this has taken the form of them speculating, without any evidence, this idea that COVID-19 was something that the Chinese communists cooked up in a lab in order to wreak havoc on the world.
The paper recently produced this documentary about the origin of the virus. It pushed so many debunked theories, Facebook flagged it as false information.
Here in Canada, there have also been reports of unsolicited deliveries of a particularly provocative issue of the newspaper to people who don't want it. But the problems with Falun Gong media go deeper than that. You see, some time ago, Master Lee apparently concluded that Donald Trump is a divine agent of heaven sent to us to destroy the Chinese communists.
So part of their spiritual belief, and it is a sort of spiritual practice, right? Spiritual group, is that Donald Trump is like a key figure in delivering the final judgment and victory over Chinese communism that they so anxiously wait for.
That is 100% correct. And what this particular prophecy means is that anyone who opposes President Trump and his divine mandate must surely be an agent of evil in some way. And this opens the door to basically any lunatic pro-Trump conspiracy theory you can imagine. Falun Gong's leading conspiracy theory arm is the YouTube channel Edge of Wonder, which I've actually talked about before. They're really big into the whole QAnon, Pizzagate, deep state stuff, as well as basically all the other greatest hits of the right-wing crackpot set.
According to Q, the source of the financial control of the world are three groups: the Rothschilds, George Soros, and Saudi Arabia.
And whenever China comes up, they hew tightly to the official Falun Gong party line.
Falun Gong is a meditation practice based on the universal principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, and it believes in God or the divine creator. We have videos about this on YouTube.
So why are they being persecuted? Well, we believe this is because now there is a high demand of new lungs from victims who have the virus in China.
There are some other Falun Gong front channels on YouTube as well, which are managed by a larger media network known as NTD, or New Tang Dynasty. The most well-known of these is China Uncensored, which pushes a pretty
Okay, yeah,
steady
so this video is at least a lot better than Illuminati's video, where she basically could not go like 2 minutes without saying another bad thing about China, and where also she didn't, I believe, mention things beyond the Epoch Times, really. She didn't go into that at all. Her video is extraordinarily bad. But, I mean, this video is still bad, but it's not quite as bad.
Of anti-China commentary in sync with general Falun Gong rhetoric.
The Chinese Communist Party is lying about the data. They're killing people for their organs, and they're making lots of money.
But some of the other affiliated channels are pretty weird. Like, they have a women-centric beauty channel called Beauty Within, hosted by these two pretty ladies. And while a lot of the content they make is just sort of general woman stuff, you can see in this video they made about meditation. They are quietly pushing links to Falun Dafa, which is described as Fel and Rose meditation practice. And do you want to see some cool detective work I did? At one point, one of the ladies is reminiscing about her personal history with meditation.
You have a baby picture of you meditating.
Oh yeah, with my dad. So it was something that...
Freeze frame. This poster behind the dad here is an official Falun Gong poster, which illustrates all the 5 Falun Dafa exercises demonstrated by Mr. Li Hongzhi, the founder of Falun Dafa. Now, here is the big problem that I have with all of this. As I said in the beginning of the video, it is perfectly valid to be concerned about the growing geopolitical power of China. Personally, I think that this issue has the potential to define global politics for a generation or more, in the same way that the power of the Soviet Union did during the Cold War. But if those of us concerned with the rise of China allow a leadership role to be played in this conflict by a loopy cult with little respect for the truth, then we are ultimately just shooting ourselves.
Yeah, this is the same thesis as Illuminati's video, where it's basically they want China to be overturned, right? It sounds really quiet. Let me raise the gain a little bit more. Is that better? They want China to be overturned. They want China to be overthrown. But they don't want it done by Falun Gong, which they perceive as incompetent, right? They want it done by a competent organization. They want it done by a more liberal, effective organization. So it's not like they don't want Xi Jinping dead. It's not like they don't want the Communist Party overthrown. It's just that they want it done effectively. That's the real problem they have with Falun Gong.
Cannot allow the anti-China position to be defined by liars and crackpots and religious fanatics, which is of course exactly what the Chinese government often dismisses its critics as being. In particular, I am quite worried that the Falun Gong cult is getting in way too deep with the conservative movement of this content. These days, I have noticed that whenever criticism is made of any Falun Gong-aligned media outlet, particularly the Epoch Times, conservatives will rush to defend it. We saw this when Facebook banned the Epoch Times for deceptive advertising practices in 2019, or when mainstream media outlets like NBC or the CBC in this country published critical reporting on them. There is a tendency to assume that because Falun Gong-aligned media is pro-Trump and anti-China, well, they must be the good guys here and their critics just jealous progressives. Just anecdotally, I've also heard stories here in Canada of conservative politicians starting to get into Falun Gong spiritual practice, or otherwise falling under the direct influence of the cult in some way, which is pretty disturbing. Now, the idea of American conservatives coming under the sway of a weird Asian cult might strike you as extremely bizarre, but there's actually a pretty strong precedent for this. Have you ever heard of the Moonies, the mass marriage people? They were started by a guy from North Korea known as the Reverend Moon. Like Master Lee, he also faced
faced persecution in his native land and immigrated to America. And like Falun Gong, his wacky religion was also taken seriously by a lot of conservative Americans because of how stridently anti-communist it was. The Reverend Moon did a very good job marking himself as a vital ally in the fight against North Korean communism, and as the years went on, he embraced more generally right-wing causes as well. He was a huge supporter of Presidents Nixon and Reagan, and was a particularly outspoken proponent of gun rights. Conservative leaders in other countries loved him too, including Margaret Thatcher and Brian Mulroney. He even founded his own conservative newspaper, known as the Washington Times. Not the Washington Post, where I work, the Washington Times. But in retrospect, backing the Reverend Moon was one of many disastrous alliances the West made in the name of fighting communism. Today we know that the Moonies were a terribly oppressive and traumatizing cult that engaged in brainwashing, forced labor, and the physical and sexual abuse of its members. The Reverend Moon was also eventually outed as a crook who had enriched himself through all sorts of shady financial doings. And as he got older, his views eventually grew so extreme and insane that no one wanted anything to do with him anymore. He died in 2012 as a thoroughly disgraced embarrassment. There is a lot we do not currently know about the inner workings of Falun Gong and Master Lee's empire, but knowing what we know about cults, it is very hard to believe that this story will not ultimately end the same way as the Moonies. One of the most important lessons of the Cold War is that the enemy of my enemy cannot always be my friend. If we want to triumph in a battle of ideas, it is vitally important that those who profess to be on the side of what is morally right and just are able to maintain that integrity. And as long as Falun Gong remains an ally of the West, that task becomes a lot harder than it should.
Yeah, this guy's just basically fucking mentally ill and insane to think that any part of the Cold War was like on the side of goodness or truth or morality. Like he's clearly a Cold Warrior. He believes in the Cold War and he wants another Cold War. When it's like, what did the U.S. do good during the Cold War in the name of fighting communism? They destroyed country after country after country. And again, it was not even mainly about fighting communism. It was more just about taking that country. They did the exact same thing post World War II that they did before World War II, which was coup or invade countries to take their resources. So.
Should be.
Libs, man, what can you say? Well, oh, thank you, Kawa. Awesome. You've become a chem head. That's awesome. I really appreciate that. Yeah, if you want to, if you don't have a Patreon, you can join the YouTube. There's a membership in the YouTube, and that gives you things that I can't give you with a Patreon. Specifically, you can like put emoticons in the YouTube chat, exclusive emoticons, and then also sometimes just when you open my channel, it'll just like list the YouTube members, so you'll be there too if that means something. But proud Chemhead, hell yeah, let's go. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty tired and pretty exhausted by this. I suspect that to liberals like him, cooing and invading undemocratic countries is a moral good in and of itself. Yeah, I mean that's the whole idea. Is it's like they're doing good by what, and it's the whole buzzword of undemocratic and authoritarian. Liberals just operate off of these buzzwords that don't exist in reality. Like I don't even think they think they're good guys, and then that's the thing, you know. And that's why videos like Johnny Harris's video are important for displaying the reality, which is that they're obviously not good guys. But even people like Johnny Harris, who are at least more left-wing than this fucking loser, at least people like Johnny Harris, but even people like Johnny Harris, they still cannot get it right. They still get a ton of shit wrong because they still view the world through a fundamentally America good, capitalism good framework. So the best way to destroy that framework is to just look at the Cold War and look what America did. I might be down to watch one more video if someone has an interesting video to watch. Oh, yeah, next time watch and react to Tick's 6-hour Nazis or Socialist video. Holy fuck, that guy is an insane person. Finnish Bolshevik did a video responding to that. Yeah, Tick History is just insane. I'm thinking of making I am making a video sort of about history YouTube, and but I'm the video I'm releasing is already sort of about history YouTube, but I'm thinking of doing a more in-depth dive into the whole culture of history YouTube as a whole, because it's so right-wing that it's crazy. Like, there's almost no left-wing history channels, like almost none that I know of, like besides like Bad Empanada. I know of almost no like significant with like a decent following history channels. He released another one, so he's doubling down. God, that guy's a fucking piece of shit, man. Finnish Bolshevik completely destroyed the idea that it was socialism. Like, completely destroyed it. Finnish Bolshevik is like maybe my favorite channel in a lot of ways. He's made so many amazing videos. Watch any JPW video. I don't know what JPW is. I mean, I can just go to fucking Laowai's channel and just look at the thumbnails, and that's like enough comedy. Am I funded by the CIA and Falun Gong? That's the video that comes up instantly. That's incredible. Honestly, that might be interesting. He probably is funded by the Falun Gong, honestly. I found China's dirty secret. Oh my god, the whole coup, the whole fake coup thing, that video came out the day, the whole fake coup news came out the day after I released my video talking about the fear-mongering about China and America. Like, the day after, which is just hilarious. Dear Elon, please shut up. Yeah. Yeah, Elon Musk's a communist. China's in really bad shape. My Chinese wife. I think that's Serpenzal, who's like the My Chinese Wife guy, who makes like endless videos about his Chinese fucking wife. Oh, John Paul Watson. Do you mean you mean like the Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson? Jim Hose, oh my god. His views are fucking wild. He releases a video like every 5 days. That's wild.
Would we cope without our scapegoats? How teachers are re-educating boys brainwashed by Andrew Tate. Yeah, unfortunate choice of phrase there, since re-education is literally the same as brainwashing. Normally done against someone's will. No, it's only okay when left-wing teachers are brainwashing your kids, sis.
Cool. What's wrong with that?
Well, that's just harmless teaching. This, on the other hand,
You have to build yourself as a man. If you decide not to build yourself, then your life's gonna suck.
That's dangerous brainwashing and radicalization. The only thing teachers.
This stuff is just so dumb and boring to watch because it's just so, like, obviously dishonest. Like, the amount of times Andrew Tate's talked about, you know, like, basically raping women and enslaving women and how he does that.
Should be doing is teaching actual subjects. You know, maths, geography, chemistry. What are they actually doing as part of this re-education of young men? Literally telling them the phrases man up and be a man shouldn't be used. This isn't hyperbole. They had an entire assembly geared towards the unlearning of Andrew Tate's supposedly dangerous, radicalizing rhetoric and said man up and be a man were part of toxic masculinity. What? You're literally treating the use of the word man as a form of toxic masculinity. You're literally telling them to be ashamed of their innate biological reality. Then you wonder why these young men resonate more with the behavior of someone like Andrew Tate.
Happiness is the number one thing that must be earned. And I'll tell you that my happiness is based on very real world achievements. I couldn't be happy if I was broke. I couldn't be happy if I was obese. I couldn't be happy if I was lonely. I couldn't be happy if I wasn't respected. I couldn't be happy if I couldn't whoop a dude's ass. I couldn't be happy in those scenarios, so I made sure none of them scenarios came true.
A female teacher at another school said
What the fuck?
giving up on
He's playing that clip like that makes Andrew Tate look good?
needed education to thrive. Pupils always ended up saying, I can get rich on the internet, that's what Andrew Tate did. But what good is education for young men nowadays, especially young white men? Preparing them for the illustrious career of being a lifetime wager at McDonald's?
It's so interesting how often, and I've noticed this the more I've looked at right-wing content, how much they co-opt like populist left-wing ideas of, you know, being a wage slave. And I notice this a lot in like the songs that I parody. Like I detect a little capitalism, or what we need is a few more rednecks. Like all this media, it all co-ops leftist ideas of like the downtrodden workers, but the solution is always the opposite of socialism. It's fascism.
I hate this job. Preparing them for the glorious day. In about 25 years' time, they just might be able to afford a 10% deposit to get a giant mortgage on a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. The economic system has failed them. The education system has failed them. For years, long before Andrew Tate
You don't get a mortgage on an apartment. What the fuck is he talking about?
flexed his supercar collection. In the UK, the number of white boys getting on degree courses has fallen by 7% in just 10 years. Working class white boys are the most likely to fail in school compared to any other race. In the US, 2/3 of the students in the top 10% of the class at high school are girls. Maybe if you spend more time actually educating and not brainwashing young men, more time giving them confidence instead of ramming identity politics down their throats, instead of ordering them to feel sheepish and contrite about being male, instead of re-educating and browbeating them for quoting Andrew Tate videos, it wouldn't be failing at school and they resonate more with you than him.
When you were at home, you were the man of the house, and when you weren't home, your wife adopted your mindset and she was the woman of the house, and the children spent a lot of time around you listening to you and how you think and how you feel. But now we have two parents, both have to go to work. The kids are left on their own, either watching YouTube and all this bullshit or going to school and all this bullshit. Like, a lot of parents have very little influence over their children anymore. The Matrix has influence over their children. The Matrix is raising them.
Save me the sanctimonious crap about Andrew Tate being responsible for radicalizing a generation of young men. It wasn't Andrew Tate who triggered the crisis of masculinity. It wasn't Andrew Tate who removed healthy masculine role models from society. It wasn't Andrew Tate who taught young men to be broken, apologetic, spineless, and hopeless. Andrew Tate didn't just appear out of a vacuum. He's a symptom of a culture that vilifies men. A culture that you created. Observe the immediate innate reactions people give when asked what women are good.
Yeah, I don't ever watch this content like even just to, or only to laugh at, but I mean this is the right wing radicalization at work. Like, we are watching live how videos like this are radicalizing people towards the right, and because places like China and Cuba don't allow these people to have a platform, they don't allow these YouTubers to turn young men into fascist right-wingers. China and Cuba and all these places are authoritarian dictatorships because they, you know, don't allow this insane shit to be platformed. It shouldn't be platformed. None of this trash should be allowed to exist. I openly believe that. I fully and openly believe in the idea of suppressing speech that causes harm.
Compared to what men are good for.
What are women good for? Everything. Everything. What's are women good for?
Literally everything.
What are women good for?
They're good for everything.
What are men good for?
Nothing.
What's a man good for?
What are men good for? Oh, not a lot, I don't think.
What's a man good for?
Oh God, I have literally no.
What are men good for? Do you think men are important in society?
Well, I guess,
It's sad that the question of
That's such a weird question to ask. Do you think men are important in society? Like, yeah, no shit, they're important. What the fuck is that even supposed to mean? Jesus Christ. Glad to see someone who isn't a free speech absolutist. Yeah, you know, I wish we lived in a world where free speech absolutism didn't lead to fucking Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and all of these people. But it does, you know, and I just don't see, you know, the value in any of this content. And not just that. I see the incredible harm that this content poses to people.
are men important can't be answered with a simple yes. What message does this send to young boys when society says they're good at nothing? Observe how young men are portrayed on television. One of the UK's most watched TV soaps, Coronation Street, millions of viewers a week, is running a storyline where the young man concerned about his country, his identity, his role in society, tries to set off a truck bomb. Then another character who dares to suggest that young men are genuinely feeling this sense of disenfranchisement is similarly dismissed as an utter.
Our country's under attack. Like, the fact that people are trying to take away what it means to be British. There were more morals then, there were more opportunities for people like me.
People like you? Like what? Like white, you mean? Is that what you mean?
Max, this is wrong.
You can't just brush away this very real sense of disillusionment that young men in the West are feeling by blaming it all on Andrew friggin' Tate. It existed long before him and will continue to exist no matter if you lock him up and throw away the key. Andrew Tate isn't the source of the problem. The disparagement of masculinity and the othering and debasement of young men is the source of the problem. Wagging your finger at him for laughing at Andrew Tate videos isn't the solution. This, of course, is my fully informed opinion.
I always thought Paul Joseph Watson was like a complete idiot, but he's quite good at this. I mean, his messaging, he's coming across to someone I assume who isn't educated as like reasonable and sane, when obviously he's not. But yeah, again, this content is very dangerous.
Well, let's take a closer look at how all this is being framed in the news on Ground News. Which, if you've been following my channel, you'll know this app and website has become a really useful resource in researching breaking news as it's being covered around the world. With the Ground News extension, I can see that the Times is a centre-leading outlet, and that this story is being covered by 17 total news sources, the majority of them being right-wing, making it a blind spot for the left. Let's look into the full coverage on the Ground News website. On the right here, we get a visual breakdown of the biased distribution of sources covering this particular story. An ownership chart showing which entities own the source, and the factuality rating of each source. My favourite feature is that Ground News aggregates all the sources here in one place, showing all the articles talking about this story. This is really helpful to see them all there in one place because it helps you get an understanding of how the issue is being framed by the media. I'm going to filter this for high factuality sources. Here we have all the articles from high factuality sources covering the story, so I can click in and read each one and compare coverage. For example, The Independent states one school has even decided to hold Andrew Tate assemblies due to fears over what pupils interested in the influencer are exposed to online. BBC quotes, parents need to wake up to the fact that if they don't teach their children about the world, then Andrew Tate will. Ground News app and website is the only news comparison platform, making it easy to get a full view of the media.
I love how he's like shilling for like a website that lists the BBC as a high factuality source when he's like a far right influencer. Like, this guy does not give a, he has no fucking like ideals whatsoever. He just cares about the fact that he's getting sponsored by this company, so he'll just straight up be like, yeah, Ground is a great resource. So funny. Police brutality is what radicalizes the left. The tweet by a woman joking about men is what radicalizes the right. Yeah. Yeah, there's no real oppression. There's no real, you know, actual issues that young white men face. Or at least if there are, it doesn't in any way compare to what non-white men face. They're just pissed that they're losing the power they once had.
Media landscape on controversial issues like this, so we can all become fully informed and think freely for ourselves. They also kindly sponsored this video, so I really encourage you to see for yourself at ground.news/PJW. Check out the free trial or subscribe for unlimited access to all the features I just showed you. Now back to the video. In the US last year, the biggest drop in employment was among young men aged 25 to 34. 3 out of 4 deaths of despair by overdose or suicide on men. Suicide is the third leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-old Americans. The highest suicide rates per 100,000 in the US are among white males. None of that's Andrew Tate's fault, is it? Whatever the Matrix has done to young men, it's clearly not helping young men.
You look lonely. I can fix that.
Oh my god.
A different message. When I was growing up, we had positive male role models who were promoted by the culture. Batman was a kick-ass, upstanding, crime-fighting superhero. What's Batman now? A self-doubting, depressed emo kid trapped in a man's body? Who were the positive male role models for young men?
Dude, this content is just so insidious. Those edits are just the worst, man. It's all just capitalism, hence capitalists funding this huge industry of fascist content to distract them from the real cause of their problems. And yeah, this is why this kind of shit should not be fucking allowed to exist, because all it does is it fucking takes, you know, people who could become left-wingers or leftists, but it radicalizes them into right-wingers because it preys on their fears and their anxieties. And to a certain extent, I think a lot of people are, you know, genetics are somewhat determine your political beliefs. I think a lot of people are just gonna be fucking fascists. They're just gonna be right-wingers no matter what in life. But at least some people, you know, among the are just being radicalized into terrible people because of the framing of these videos.
men now, and what lessons are they dispensing? None whatsoever. They've all been unceremoniously airbrushed out of our culture. We've come a long way from say your prayers and eat your vitamins.
Train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. Be true to yourself.
Who are the heroes now? People who slavishly regurgitate the message in the most supine way. Who else are young men going to turn to? The church? Yeah, good luck with that. When you forcibly remove heroes from society, people are going to create anti-heroes. I mean, they said Jordan Peterson was dangerously radicalizing young men. He couldn't be any more different to Andrew Tate.
Your life is how you treat each other over the breakfast table.
Bit of a theme emerging here, isn't there? Anyone who tries to instill any kind of self-confidence in young men by whatever method must be denigrated, monstered, and cancelled. While anyone who tells men to cry all the time, wear dresses, wallow in self-pity, and hate themselves is idolized and amplified. Why do young men like Andrew Tate? He's funny, carefree, brash, self-assured. Maybe if you hadn't spent the last 20 years deriding those natural, innate masculine traits as toxic and evil, you wouldn't have created such a desperate thirst for them amongst young men. Maybe if you hadn't hectored an entire generation of young men into feeling ashamed and worthless for expressing immutable characteristics they were born with, they wouldn't be so eager to break out and rebel against that programming. Tate tells young men, be yourself. And it's like he set them free from their shackles. They lap it up like it's the first time they ever heard it. In a world of relentless, boorish man-shaming, it's a revolutionary statement.
Tell you what you do. You become the best version of yourself, just like everyone else does.
What heroes are setting an example for young men today? You just force them all to perform meaningless loyalty oaths to whatever the current thing is.
I'm embarrassed. It is not enough.
I really
to be
do.
Not racist. You have to be anti-racist.
It might as well be produced on a fact.
Based anti-racist Logan Paul. Oh my god.
Line. None of them have any authentic personalities. Where's the appeal in that? How is that going to organically resonate with anyone? Note how the most damaging message Tate is teaching young men is the one that the establishment doesn't attack him for. The idea that having degenerate sex with as many women as humanly possible is anything other than a vacuous road to self-loathing, misery, and loneliness.
Don't mention all them hoes.
The ones from this weekend.
The ones from yesterday.
Oh, those ones.
Don't mention
The ones who came back to the house.
Yeah, they didn't cancel him for that, did they? The Matrix venerates that debauched, soulless existence. They also gave him a pass for a...
What? What is he talking about?
Apparently fathering multiple children and barely ever seeing them.
Okay, you have kids. Damn, I didn't know that. Why wouldn't I?
Do they all have different baby mothers?
They're not all different, but there's been a few ovens to bake the bread.
Despite such behaviour having devastated black communities for decades, no one cares about any of that stuff that's actually harmful to young men.
Oh,
He says
man.
something mean about women, though. That's the real outrage. Is Tate guilty of sex trafficking and all the other stuff he's accused of? I don't know. I have no idea. They locked him up without a trial. What I do know is that he's innocent until proven guilty. Half of the internet appear to be complete simpletons who think that being accused of something is the same as being convicted of it. Newsflash, it isn't. The lawyer's assertion that he hasn't even been able to properly assess the supposed evidence against the Tate should ring alarm bells. As should the fact that some of the women cited by the prosecution as accusers have since come out and defended the Tates. The head of Stalin's secret police once said, "Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime." If they want to send Tate down, they'll probably do it, whether he's guilty or not.
They can't put you in jail if you're innocent. Yes, they fucking can. That's what people don't understand about the world. They can, and they do, and they fucking will.
And when that happens, the Matrix will point to it and say, "Look, we were right all along."
Andrew Tate just fucking literally completely knew that he was fucked and he was gonna get arrested eventually, so obviously he starts talking about how, you know, they'll put you in jail for no crime and the Matrix is after me. Yeah, he's admitted, he's talked about so many times about like trafficking women, about holding them against their will, about literally slapping and beating women who don't listen to him. This shit is just so dishonest and insidious, man.
We said he should have been silenced, but the crisis of young men and masculinity won't disappear with the incarceration of Andrew Tate, because Tate is merely a symptom of a much more profound problem. Andrew Tate is what happens when you demonize young men and tell them that their entire existence should be one long...
This is exactly the same as What If Alt History video, where he does the same thing where it's like, it's not young men's fault that they're becoming fascist. It's society's fault that they're becoming fascist because society is making them into fascists, which is such a fucking disgusting and ridiculous assertion. I mean, it is to a certain extent, it is making them into fascists, but you don't stop doing progressive things because it turns some people into fascists. You keep doing progressive things. You keep making progress. And there will always be people who become more right-wing because of the progress of society. It's not like now is a unique time in history. This is always going to happen. I wonder if PJW will say people being accused is the same as guilty by simpletons about all those countries that had weapons of mass destruction.
Apology tool. Andrew Tate is what happens when you ideologically cleanse morally upstanding heroes from society and replace them with bland, banal bots who have nothing to say, no example to set, nothing to offer young men besides cringe conformity, self-disgust, and vacuous, vapid virtue signalling.
Jesus. Society is turning young men into fascists due to the failure and decay of liberal capitalism, not because women said some meanie bobini things about guys. Yeah, it's just blaming like it's the supposed decay and decadence of society, and that's why everyone's becoming fascist. No, it's because you are white men and you have held control over the world for millennia, and now that you feel an inch of your power and control is being taken from you, you're reacting angrily and violently because you want to hold on to that power. That's wild. The white guy who became Chinese by accident. The Philippines, China's new province. In the meantime, the U.S. just announced like 6 new military bases in the fucking Philippines. Let's check out Serpenzaw's channel. China is painting mountains green to fool. Oh my god, I love Serpenzaw. He's amazing. The Chinese girl who came running back when I had money. How India is better than China. India is like a fascist, far-right government that openly has like fascist militias that roam the streets and like kill people who are left-wing. If your country has an open like Maoist rebellion in the country, then there's probably a reason. If you go if you go far back enough in his videos, so many of them are about his Chinese wife. It's really fucking funny. He has like 10 China is over videos. Kind of curious how China's painting mountains green.
Yes, that is a man stapling fake leaves to a tree. And yes, these are Chinese work crews rolling down fake leaves and fake camo netting over barren, destroyed mountains to make them look green and natural again. I know some environmentalists who would move mountains to save the environment. But in China, why move mountains when you can simply paint them? I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of tired of getting my news from the same old sources. I mean, seriously, Clippy, no, I don't want to know what's new in the world today. Before I started using Morning Brew, I honestly would just kind of turn my phone on and go into my social media.
Well, Laowai and Serpent, why are all these guys' videos about China? They're both people who came to China, I believe, on to teach English, because that's a big industry, is for American people move to China to teach English as a second language. And this is quite often done by like libertarian weirdo fascists, because for some reason they a lot of them really fetishize Asian women. And so they use the fact that they like taught China or taught English in China for like a few years as like this like reason that they actually know anything about China, which obviously they don't. If you want to commit self-harm, Vosh interviewed somebody living in China and they were talking some bullshit about Chinese facial recognition security cameras. I think I watched that video. I don't know if it's the one you're thinking of, but it was extremely fucking funny. The one I watched was like this guy who admitted he was like a liberal, and Vosh was like grilling the guy, trying to get something like super juicy or like salacious out of the guy. And the guy was clearly anti-China, but like he just could not give Vosh anything. He could not give Vosh anything that was like interesting or scary. And he also just kept saying like, I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I'm not well read on this and that. And it was just like, Vosh, you're a fucking idiot. You're interviewing a guy who has no fucking clue what he's talking about, who is admitting he's like completely ignorant about China, even though he's lived there for years. You just wanted a fucking like anti-China guy to come on your stream, and then the guy just floundered the whole time. It's a very funny video. Honestly, I could literally fucking like probably make a career out of just reacting to Vosh videos, and honestly it would probably be like fucking worth it, because his videos are very fun to react to because he's so insane. And I just, as someone who used to be his fan and sort of has like a morbid fascination with the guy, I know a lot about him. I know his verbal tics. I know the way he frames things, the way he weasels out of things. So I can it's easy to pick him apart.
Yeah, apps and see whatever popped up first. So how Morning Brew changes all of this is it's a free daily newsletter that comes directly to your inbox, and it gets you up to speed on business, finance, and now back to the show. when I saw in China the local, I guess, municipality or the local town painting the brown grass green. I'm talking on an industrial scale here. I was there and they had these workers and they pulled out their little sprayer guns and they had a truck and everything and they painted the grass green. It smelled of chemicals, it smelled disgusting, and I was really blown away. I was like thinking to myself, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. Usually if grass is not green and it's brown, well, it means that it's not getting enough water, maybe not enough sunshine, maybe not enough nutrients or fertilizer, the soil's bad. Why would anyone spray paint the grass green? Now, before anyone jumps down my throat saying, oh, this happens elsewhere in the world, yes. During research for this video, I of course figured out that many places paint the grass green. I'm talking about golf courses, places like Disneyland. If they've got a brown patch, they've got a special kind of a grass paint, for lack of a better word. It's supposed to be a kind of an organic dye that doesn't damage the grass itself, but it makes it green. In California, during drought times, you've got companies that can come paint your lawn for you. I understand that this is not a new thing, and it makes sense because China would have had to get the idea from somewhere. The difference is that in China, they're not using organic dyes or some kind of nutrient. They're using oil paint and spray paint and things like that. And it's not just the grass that they're painting. They paint trees. They paint mountains. Well, pretty much anything. They paint rocks in a quarry. And I have to explain to you why this happens. It's not like all of a sudden China's decided that green is a better aesthetic for their mountain rock faces or something like that. And I'll tell you the first time I remember really finding out about this phenomenon. And that was around about 2007. I remember reading in the news in China, because you know what? Chinese news used to be a lot more capable of actually criticizing some of the bad moves of the government or the local governments back in the day. Of course, that's impossible now. They may not criticize the government, but this was 2007, you know. Still the good years in China. So anyway, I remember reading in the news that in Yunnan, there was a mountain that had been quarried for a number of years. Of course, it was a big eyesore. And there was a big directive from the central government at that time to start to enact these environmental programs. And usually how this works, this is always how it works in China, is the central government puts a directive. They're like, okay, now we have to care for the environment, and we're going to give you monetary incentives. So in other words, if you can turn your local city into a green city or an environmentally, healthy city, you get some more cash from the local government, from the central government, that kind of thing. So what they decided in all their wisdom was, well, we can't make this look good because it's a bare-faced quarry. It looks terrible. We've destroyed this mountain. It looks awful. What we'll do is we'll just paint it green to make it look natural. And they spent a huge amount of money, something along the lines of $500,000 RMB at the time, I remember because it was in the article. So that would have been about $60,000, $70,000 US at the time, to paint this, well, mountain green. And the locals were like, what the hell's going on here? The locals even...
So yeah, this might be true, this might not. I will not give this guy a single inch of, charitability. But even assuming it's true, I mean, yeah, this is something that just happens where there's corruption, So the government will directs like a group to perform an action, and occasionally what will happen is that obviously will not be done, or will be done in an inept or corrupt or dishonest way. I think another case of this was how people would just build like ghost town empty cities basically with the money given to them by the Chinese government. The difference between the Chinese government and America is that in America, when you do this, nothing happens to you, or you get a fine that is like 1/1000th of the money you made from performing the action. In China, if you do something like this, they execute you. They put you to death. So there's much less of an incentive to do this kind of thing in China, because the ramifications of disobeying the Chinese government are huge. They put you to death. They don't even just make you bankrupt often. I mean, they might do that. They might just put you in prison for life, but they will also just put you to death. So you might think that's harsh. You might think that's crazy. I don't. But even if you do, it disincentivizes people from doing corrupt shit like that. In America, you're completely incentivized to fucking do whatever you want to destroy the country, because there's no fucking punishment that comes from it. You never get punished. Martin Shkreli, who he fucking overcharged pharmaceuticals or whatever, and he got like a few years in prison for it. In China, you'd be fucking executed. And then no one would do that anymore because you don't want to get executed too. Wasn't the whole Ghost Cities thing pretty much a nothing burger? Could be. Honestly, I remember seeing that when I was still a lib, so that might be that there's a very good chance that that's probably or possibly not true. But I know there was like a real estate bubble or something, so who knows. I know I was going to end the stream a while, but I'm kind of having fun, so I'll keep going. Imagine if fucking tomorrow Joe Biden sent the fucking DOD to Elon Musk's mansion and just arrested him and put him before like a tribunal in front of him on live TV or something. Honestly, Joe Biden should himself be put before a tribunal. In Minecraft. I don't mean that literally. Please don't ban me. I'm totally joking. I don't. Hail Biden. Praise Biden. I like Biden. How China is slowly killing us all. Chinese wife! Chinese wife! Yeah, it just goes on forever. I would watch this video, but I need to learn more about Mao. I don't know enough about Mao. Praising China is selfish and immoral. What's interesting is it doesn't seem like he's made many videos, at least looking at the thumbnails, about the Uyghurs, when that's like the big thing that people have hit China on for years. I wonder if it's because they're Muslims, so he approves. China is not communist. So I think this was like when he was less openly anti-China because he still lived in China. You can tell by the thumbnails they're less blatantly anti-China. There are still plenty of anti-China videos, but it's not like later on when it becomes just like rabidly anti-China. Like every video almost is like anti-China. And he gets more views in his more recent videos. I kind of want to watch Lao Wai's "Am I Part of Falun Gong" video. Oh, was he advertising Shen Yun, really? Oh, wow. Is he part of Shen Yun? Or Falun Gong?
There's a secret Chinese war happening here on the streets of America, and you guys have no idea how deep this runs. Guys, this is a very, very sensitive topic, and so I hope you understand when I talk about this, I have to be very balanced. I have to walk the middle path. I can neither be foul nor beast, and there are reasons for that, of course, which you'll find out. But I want to educate all of you guys, anyone in America, and this actually will pertain to other Western countries as well. I want you guys to know about this sort of secret war for your opinion, the secret Chinese war for your opinion that is happening in the United States right now. So let's start out by talking about our two players. We've got two sides here, guys. We've got the Chinese government, the Communist Party, and they are on the one side. On the other side, we have a religion, which actually in China is called an evil cult, called the Falun Gong. And these two groups are trying to persuade you to take their side. Now, I'm going to explain to you how. Well, let's just get into it. So when I got to America, I noticed something that I'd never seen before. In fact, I have a flyer right here that I'm going to show you. Ta-da! Shen Yun. Now, first of all, because I have a lot of subscribers that watch my videos, they were suggesting, oh, you should go and take a look at this. This is a fantastic Chinese dance troupe type thing, and they have a big extravaganza. So I was kind of surprised to see these flyers everywhere. I, in fact, picked this up out of a barber, a hairdresser, a Vietnamese hairdresser of all places, where I went to go get a haircut. But I also noticed them being stuffed as junk mail into mailboxes. I saw a billboard even with one of these next to the highway. Can't remember where, but I saw one of these actually on my last trip in January, somewhere down near San Francisco. And I was like, what the hell is this? Why have I never heard of it? And on the back it says, absolutely the #1 show in the world. It's got endorsements from celebrities like Kate Blanchett, etc., etc. And, you know, I know quite a lot about China, and because I've been living there for so long.
Kate Blanchett is part of the Falun Gong? Oh my god.
Etc., etc. And, you know, I know quite a lot about China, and because I've been living there for so long and being married to a Chinese family and stuff, but I'd never heard of this. So I was curious, and I asked my friend about this, a friend of mine here who's married to a Chinese wife, and he said, whatever you do, don't take Sasha
Chinese wife?
to see it. And I was like, what do you mean? It seems like it's about Chinese culture, so she'll probably enjoy it. He's like, no. That caused big problems with my marriage, because he's married to a Chinese lady, and slightly older, like the older generation, sort of in your 50s type, middle-aged, right? And basically, he said he took her to see it, and it ended up, at the end, when they walked out, she was furious, she was upset, and it caused a huge amount of arguments and trouble with their relationship, and almost, put an end to their relationship, actually. And I thought, this sounds really weird, right? So I thought I'd look it up, and it turns out it's got heavy ties to the Falun Gong. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Falun Gong. From now on, I'm going to call them the FG, because even mentioning their name in China can get you into trouble. They're completely banned in China. China sees them as an evil cult. Now, you can just look them up and you can find out and kind of make up your own mind. But basically, they've got a massive agenda to try and get the support of the Western world and anyone who will listen to them, because they are persecuted in China, which they are. I mean, if you practice this religion or cult or whatever you want to call it, you will get arrested. You will go to be detained. There will be some crap going on. But at the same time, these guys are super annoying. Okay, I've got to be bluntly honest, at least in my experience, because remember, I talk from experience, not hearsay. In my experience, the FG are basically the Jehovah's Witnesses of Asia. If you've ever had a flyer put on your car, which I have had at the San Diego Zoo, when I took Sasha there, I came out, there's this flyer with these disgusting pictures and talking about organ harvesting and, that kind of thing. That's the Falun Gong. When I went to Washington, D.C., in the National Mall, they had them standing there protesting with their big placards. They're kind of like a semi-permanent place they were set up. And, they've got their big things with organ harvesting and, the terrible things that happen to their members in mainland China, etc., etc. So they're everywhere, and they're trying their best to spread the message and spread the word, right, through various different means. And it turns out Shen Yun is one of them. There's a whole lot of their messages and propaganda built into the performance itself. And that's why my friend's wife got so upset, because, the stuff that they were saying in the performance is completely counter to the narrative in China, completely counter to the way she grew up. And of course, there are two sides to every story, but let's just put it that way. I want you guys to know what's going on. Now, let's talk about the other side, which is the government, the Communist Party. Now, what they do is they've basically infiltrated all of the big universities here through something called the Confucius Institute. All right. Now, I can say for an absolute fact that they're there to try and censor and at least channel the way people think about China and the opinions towards China. Because it happened to me. I think it was 2 years ago when I first came to America, that big trip across America. I got invited by a subscriber of mine who is actually he's a professor of journalism at the University of Arizona. That's what he does. He's got something to do with the journalism department anyway. And he invited me to come and make a speech about my then new Conquering Southern China documentary. And, I was very honored, and I thought, sure, why not? So I went there, and, there was a classroom full of people. Had a projector, showed them the trailer, talked about some of my amazing adventures and experiencing the food and the culture. But there was a specific group in the classroom who really annoyed me, okay? So why did they annoy me so much? Well, it's quite simple. They kept interrupting me. And when I was trying to do my lecture or presentation, whatever you want to call it, they would constantly interrupt me and try to correct me or try to change what I said. So for instance, I'd say, while we were traveling through Guizhou, it was incredibly poor. The people there are very, impoverished. Not trying to say it's a bad thing or anything, it's just a fact, like what we'd see. And immediately they'd be like, no, but that China's got the biggest GDP up, this and that and the next thing. And in America too, if you go to the south of America, they're also very poor. Things like that. And that's got nothing to do with my presentation. It's kind of annoying. If I say the condition of the roads were bad in the rural parts, I'll say, yes, but, the conditions of the road in America was bad too. And, this kind of a whataboutism stuff, the kind of thing I'm used to the ultra-nationalists saying in my comments section, but now they're saying this to me in real life, and it's really annoying. So, obviously completely besides the point, because I'm not trying to criticize and say it's bad, I'm just saying what it was like to ride through rural China, Anyway, they were sitting there taking notes and all this kind of stuff, and I found it very annoying, upsetting that they would be doing something like that, while I was, quite frankly, just having a conversation and just trying to show people the joys of traveling through China, the amazing food and culture. It really took away from all of that.
I'm just trying to have a conversation. I'm just trying to show people the joys of Chinese culture. Okay, asshole. You fucking complete slime ball. Clearly making fun of Chinese culture. Making fun of Chinese culture. He has countless videos clearly mocking China, disparaging China, disparaging Chinese women, saying India is better than China. Like, the guy is just such a fucking dishonest piece of shit. Stop thinking the USA is worse than China. So yeah, I mean, he's literally just an ultra-nationalist for America.
Anyway, this wasn't the first time I'd run into this Confucius Institute, because this year, January, when I came to do Quest for the Best Chinese with CMilk, if you haven't seen it, guys, you have to. We put a lot of effort into it, and I think it came out really well. All that's trying the best Chinese food.
He hangs out with Lao Wai a lot, also. He has like a oh my god, yeah, he openly advertises Lao Wai in his YouTube. And he also has like a joint channel with Lao Wai. Oh, I can't find it. That's weird.
Authentic Chinese food, that we could find in America on the West Coast. Anyway, while I was here, at the end of it, I had to go back to Arizona to leave my Corvette there, because my friend lives in Arizona. That's where the Corvette stays when I'm out of America, and it'll be back there again in a couple of days. So, anyway, I went with my friend and the Confucius Institute, which his wife has now joined their activities. We're having a big concert. And I thought, okay, sure, let's check it out. I'm not really into that kind of thing, to be honest, but if
the
not,
China
show.
Show.
So we went there, and they had this beautiful orchestra there, and they had the Chinese traditional instruments, and it was like
The China Show.
Music and Chinese music. And I'll be honest with you, it was actually a great show. It really came out well. I was very impressed. But again, every single time between songs, there would be like a monologue from this MC, who's a lady who is part of the Confucius Institute. And she was saying all these like things about China, how amazing the culture, how amazing this and that. And a lot of the things she was saying didn't sit right with me, and they were over-exaggerated, and they were misleading. And it's the kind of thing that if you lived in China, you would know that what she was talking was a bunch of bollocks, basically, most of the time. But there's
Is he gonna say a single example? Of course not.
nothing wrong with being proud of your culture and your country, and I actually appreciated that they were trying to show some sort of traditional Chinese culture. Very much like that, what's it called, Shen Yun thing, where they're also trying to show some Chinese traditional culture, but mixing their messages in between it, So anyway, after the whole thing, the lady that was actually sitting in my classroom that time I did a lecture like a year, 2 years before, she came over and she had a camcorder and she was recording me and asking my opinion about what I thought, because she knows who I am. So I had to be very guarded with my words, because once again, she was trying to steer my words and put words in my mouth, which I don't like. So she said, what did you think of the performance? And I was like, it was really great for you to be able to show some traditional Chinese culture, and I appreciated that you give people the opportunity to see it. And she would be like, yes, but our culture, this and that, and, basically just trying to steer my opinion, which really...
Yeah, fuck this guy. I feel like they have another channel. I feel like this isn't their only channel together. Maybe this one is? It's kind of wild that they have a channel with fucking 208,000 subscribers with only 6 videos released. That's wild. That's very weird. Probably tons of fucking bots. Yeah, this is their more active channel together. They make these videos called like why you shouldn't hate China. And then like every fucking video they release besides that is like why you should hate China. Yeah, these videos are terrible. I'm subscribing so I remember about this channel so I can maybe watch more later. Oh, their main videos are in their live Chinatown, China show. Oh, okay, so they do have, okay. God, they have so much fucking content, bro. So they each have their own channel, then they have this channel, and then they also have this channel. They are just pumping this shit out, my God. You see why people always make these videos about how China is collapsing, because every fucking time, despite the fact that this has happened like 8,000 times that they're saying China is going to collapse, people still fall for it, and people still think like, oh, there's going to be a Chinese revolution any second now. Oh. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna head out now. It's been fun. If you want to support me, you know, please subscribe, or you can subscribe to me on Patreon or a YouTube membership. Videos should be coming out this weekend. But yeah, so stay tuned. Is this gonna be posted as a live later? Yeah, all of my streams on YouTube, or I think if I stream more, I'm gonna do it on YouTube. It'll all just be there and live if you ever want to go back to it. Anyways, good night, everyone. Sleep well.